Good afternoon from Geneva. Good morning, good midday, and good evening to all of you, and welcome to this second anniversary of the Reform Tracker for National Trade Facilitation Committees. This meeting will focus on helping NTFCs on how the Reform Tracker can manage and monitor trade facilitation reforms and how we have done that since 2020. As many of you will know, the Reform Tracker is designed by UNCTAD to empower the work of national trade facilitation committees, and in their role as coordinating and monitoring implementation of trade facilitation reforms, in particular the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement. And this is what we will be focusing on during this meeting. My name is Paul Hansen. I'm head of the UNCTAD Trade Facilitation section, and with me also today here is the entire UNCTAD Trade Facilitation team. I will start by a few practical announcements, and then we start with the agenda. First of all, there is interpretation in English, French, and Spanish. I think on most screens, on the bottom of your screen, you will see a globe, and under the globe it says interpretation. If you press this, you will be able to choose either the original language or English interpretation, French interpretation, or Spanish interpretation. And hopefully that will cater for most languages. During the session here, there will be a number of presentations. If you have questions for the presentations, the microphones are not open. But what you can do is you can use the Q&A feature that is most likely also on the bottom of your screen. You press the Q&A, and in there you can write your question. You can also do that in the chat. And my colleagues will be monitoring this, and we will try to group some of the questions, and I will then read out the questions along the way when we have had presentations or at the end of the session. The session will last in total around 3 hours we have in front of us, and I hope it will be informative in the way of presenting what is the Reform Tracker, presenting some of the results of the Reform Trackers, and then have a number of cases presented from user countries. We will also have an intervention from donors, and I will now start also to go through the agenda. Before doing that, we would like to have a little impression on who is participating. So therefore, we will now be launching a poll where we would like you to just indicate if you are a user of the Reform Tracker, if you are not user, or what category you are, so we have an impression who is participating in the meeting. Having said that, let me introduce the agenda and the speakers of today, and I hope that you will see my screen in a second. So the agenda is as follows. We will start by some welcoming words by Mr. Jan Hoffmann, who is the chief of the Trade Logistics branch of UNCTAD, and that is in there that also trade facilitation is anchored. Following that, my colleague Arantxa Sanchez will provide you with an insight in the journey on how we have reformed to arrive to the Reform Tracker where we are today, and the journey we have taken. And after that, we will have Ms. Lauren Atkinson from UK Customs that will give a perspective from the donor side. UK has supported the development that we are doing on the Reform Tracker very significantly, and we are very pleased and grateful from that. And following that, we will go to 5 presentations from user countries. The first from Kenya by Nujoma Riki Tadeo and Samson Garama. Secondly, from Lesotho by Moteba Malibeng. then from Honduras, from Karan Sosa, and then from Namibia, Johanna Amukushu, and finally from Ecuador, Ms. Gabriela Cardenas. And at the end of that, we will also have the opportunity to share some gratitude to some of the users we have had so far, some of those users that have been particularly involved in the development of the reform trackers in different countries. And that will be around 16:45. And then at 1700 hours Geneva time, in 3 hours, we will come to the end of this session. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and I will hand over to my colleague Jan Hoffmann for some welcoming words. Jan is, as I said, the head of the UNCTAD Trade Logistics branch. And in this branch, there is included the implementation of various transport and trade facilitation issues. And Jan is a longtime co-author and coordinator of UNCTAD's, I would say, premier publication on transport and trade facilitation, namely the Review of Maritime Transport. So Jan, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. Thank you, colleagues. Really, congratulations for this organization, for the whole program. Happy birthday, second anniversary. Success always has many parents. And I think many of you in the room can really proudly claim credit for the development, for the idea. I do want to acknowledge also the work that we started this about 2 years ago now, especially in Kenya with Trademark Africa, previous Trademark East Africa. The EIC was involved. So I think this is a long walk we have all gone together. And the experiences we will see and the timeline Arantxa will share in the introduction Paul gave is really something we can all be, and you, the TF team in particular, be very proud of. I was asked to give a bit broader background to how this reform tracker fits into the overall work that we in UNCTAD do in trade logistics, including trade facilitation. So I have prepared a few slides. I was given 10 to 15 minutes. I don't think I need all of them, but who knows? If I speak too much, it may end up being this time. So let me share screen, and I hope you can now see a PowerPoint slide. Let me move this over here and click the share screen. So this is what we do in trade logistics. There are 3 different ways how we can describe what we do in this area, transport and trade facilitation for development. One way is the type of activities, and we like to say we think, we debate, and we deliver. We think, we provide research. Paul mentioned our oldest and best evaluated and almost most downloaded flagship publication, the Review of Maritime Transport. In trade facilitation, we have studies, for example, on sustainable NTFCs. We have databases, country profiles. We have studies on trade facilitation and development. We have the NTFC repository, just to name a few. And this links then to the deliver, technical assistance, capacity building, the empowerment program, the reform tracker, trade information portals. We early on worked during the negotiations, really UNCTAD, we are here very close to the WTO. We have worked with the delegates, with the WTO Secretariat on gap assessment, TFA, Trade Facilitation Agreement, implementation plans. Of course, we collaborate with our colleagues Asikuda on customs automation. Then also we have other projects, broader the transport part, because transport for us is also about facilitating trade. And then UNCTAD stands for United Nations Conference. We were created long ago to build consensus even before the WTO existed. So today we support processes at the World Trade Organization, at the International Maritime Organization. So the same member states are prepared to better negotiate. We have our own commissions and expert meetings here in UNCTAD, and then we work also with regional mechanisms. So that's one way to look at what we do, the type of activities, think, debate, deliver. Another way is to look at what are the objectives of policies, you and your countries, and we support you in different objectives. And here, I like this model, which we developed now, what is it, almost 25 years ago. What do we want to achieve? It may remind you of the idea of sustainable development, but it's really about efficiency, promoting trade, creating business, and reduce negative externalities. So in terms of efficiency, this is very much where, of course, trade facilitation comes in, improving connectivity, trade facilitation, reduce trade costs. The other circle would be to create jobs in my own port, my own shipping, my own customs brokers, my own transport business. And between these two, it's not always the same. There may be conflicts of interest. No, do I liberalize certain markets? Do I allow private sector, which may then, compete with my national private sector? And last but not least, the more and more important, the sustainability. I'm happy to see that we are also working on the linkage between green and climate change and trade facilitation. So that's one way to look at these three. What are the objectives of what we do? I think everything we do can fit in at least one of those three circles. Ideally, it fits in all three. And a third way to look at what we do is to look along the supply chain. So here we start at the factory, we go to the port, then we leave the port, or we have the shipping company, we have the security aspects, we have the contamination aspects, we have the digital aspects. So if I look at what we do along those areas, trade information portals are very important to make trade transparent for the traders in business. The implementation capacity, the empowerment program, the reform tracker, they come in also quite early in the whole process about monitoring reform, about helping countries implement trade facilitation reforms. Then we also look at transit. We have transport corridor work. We have the empowerment for the transit coordinators. Very important, of course, for the landlocked members and partners. And some of you here in the room are from the LDC. So the trade facilitation is important for you, but also trade facilitation and transit facilitation in the neighboring countries. And although nobody had yet interrupted me, I think I might be speaking a little fast for the interpreters. Apologies, disculpen, désolé. But you see what is on the screen, and this may help with the interpretation. Linked to the trade facilitation is our work in transport, which gives us a number of important KPIs, performance measures, where we can see how long does cargo spend in a port, how long do ships stay in port, how well countries are connected. And this one is very closely related when, after we have identified the bottlenecks, the hurdles, the performance indicators, when we come to the solutions, it is trade and transport facilitation. And finally, there's the issue of digitalization and trade logistics. We work with our colleagues in the e-commerce team, E-Trade for All, e-commerce research. We have partnerships on port community systems with the Chamber of Commerce, with ASICUDA, with UNC-FACT, and of course, the reform tracker. The reform tracker really goes across the whole chain. And I want to conclude with one final thought. You see, many of you may have a favorite artist, football team, music, car brand. I have a favorite article of the TFA. That's how fanatic we are here in UNCTAD. So my favorite article is 10.1. And those of you who have gone through the empowerment program and who have studied and done the impact assessment and learned about the TFA, you know, and I hope I'm preaching to the converted, that this article will gain importance, especially in the context of the reform tracker. It does not prescribe any specific solution, any specific advanced ruling, single window, pre-arrival processing. It just asks all of us to progressively review that there are various provisions that will become antiquated or obsolete, and we will just want to minimize the incidence and complexity of import, export, and transit formality. We need to continuously review requirements, keep reducing the time and cost of compliance for traders and operators, and always choose the least trade restrictive measure. For me, this is a very important motivation for the reform tracker, for this anniversary, and for the work you're doing in the weeks, months, and years to come. This includes my little introduction. I hope I have helped to put a bit into context what we are doing here, the work you are doing with the reform tracker, and this anniversary ad hoc expert meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Jan. Thank you for this introduction and for taking us down the memory lane a little bit on how we have arrived here with the start of the negotiations of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement and the entry into force. A lot of people are already using the Q&A and chat. That is great to see, and continue that. We want this to be as interactive as possible. There are also questions about the presentations. Will we have the presentations? Yes, after the meeting, we will make all of the presentations available on our website, and you can download them or see them from there. So stay tuned, and you will be able to see all of these. So with this, I think Arantxa, my colleague, mentioned to me that the poll maybe was not launched yet, but you will get it on your screen at a certain time, and then you can fill it in. You are not getting disconnected or anything like that. So with this introduction, let us move on then to the next speaker, which is my colleague Arantxa Sanchez, who will make a presentation on how we have arrived at where we are today, the 2 years anniversary. How has this all started? Why did we start this? And how did we get to where we are today? So Arantxa, we look forward to hear this. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm just moving to share my screen. Could you please confirm that you can see my presentation?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, perfect. So thank you very much for joining us in this second anniversary of the Reform Tracker. Today, I'm going to talk about why we came up with this idea of the Reform Tracker, what is the Reform Tracker, the journey of the Reform Tracker so far, the results that we have got, and the future of the Reform Tracker. So why did we came up with this idea of the Reform Tracker? So we have been working with national trade facilitation committees for so long, and we were trying to find solutions for the common challenges of the trade facilitation committees, which are usually the rotation of the personnel, the lack of knowledge transfer, the lack of an overview of what's still to be done, lack of professionalism of the committee, alongside of the lack of financial resources, which we know it's something that it's common to many of the committees. So these challenges we observed while delivering the empowerment program, and this is something that we have been working on and observing, because as you might remember, sorry, because I have to do something with my presentation, otherwise it's going to be, sorry. Sharing again, sorry for this. Here. Okay, so now it should be fine. So while we were delivering the empowerment program, we noticed, for example, we were doing in many of the countries, and many of you have seen it, the trade facilitation roadmap, which is a key tool for planification of the work of the trade facilitation committees and trade facilitation reform in general. However, after the roadmap was done, there was a lack of tools to continue the monitoring of the implementation of those reforms that were identified within the roadmap. And in many of the conversations we have with you, also with a special focus group that we organized in 2018 in the African Forum for National Trade Facilitation Committees, we realized there is really a need for a tool for monitoring and evaluation. So this was something that was already in our head, but we thought about the creation of a digital tool to solve all these issues. And we had it in our head, but we had two challenges for that. One was finding a donor willing to invest in the creation of the tool, because it was not obvious that someone would like to invest on a global product like this, instead of just helping countries with trainings and specific issues. And the second thing was the challenge of the difficulty to train people on the use of the tool on a mission-based approach. So just by traveling there and teaching, and then we didn't know how it was going to be, if it was going to work. However, then what happened is that the unexpected happened, and our world was shaking like it has never been shaken before. And somehow, thanks to COVID, all of a sudden, these two challenges we had to think about this idea of a digital tool were removed, because we could not travel anymore, and donors were willing to invest in these kinds of online tools. And also countries started to move in towards the possibility of meeting on a more regular basis over virtual meetings. So that is why we were able to do the Reform Tracker. So what is the Reform Tracker? The Reform Tracker is a web-based project management and monitoring tool for trade facilitation reforms. And I'm going to show later some of the features that will help you understand exactly how it works. So the UNCTAD Reform Tracker has been conceived to support and facilitate the work of the NTFC Secretariat and the NTFC as such in all its areas of responsibility. When it comes to meeting coordination, there is a functionality that allows to create calendar meetings online or presential. You have the online meeting platform, so you can really meet through the Reform Tracker. You can have a place where you can use the Reform Tracker to pull all the information to prepare the documentation needed for a meeting, the reports, on the status of implementation, the upcoming tasks. So really, it helps you pull the information that you need to prepare for your next NTFC meeting. And also, it sends automatic updates on those documentations to all the users. When it comes to performance management, it has a wide range of indicators and helps for the creation of ready-to-print reports. And I will show you a little bit later on this. When it comes to communication, it allows for a smooth communication of NTFC members and stakeholders. We have a functionality of a chat where you can talk to stakeholders directly online through a specific chat. And if the person is not connected, they will receive a message. And also when there is an update, you can send that update automatically to all the people involved in a particular reform. And also it creates a linkage with external websites as they might be connected, as well as is the case in some of the countries. Finally, it's a great tool for knowledge management. As I spoke, one of the most horrible challenges of NTFCs is the issue of rotation of personnel. Here, the idea is that the UNCTAD Reform Tracker is a cloud-based password-protected database that will allow you to archive and reference documents for the NTFC over time, and all the agencies can access that database. So you have a kind of a shared archive for all the agencies of all the members of the National Trade Facilitation Committee. So let me show you briefly. This is a little video that shows you how it looks when it comes to the reform tracker. You can search your reforms by lead agency, by the category, by the kind of task, the status of implementation, or by a team member, so who is involved. And you can see then an overview of these reforms and even download it. I will show it later. And when you enter in one of the reforms, you can see exactly information on what is the reform about, who is in the reform team, exactly which tasks have been allocated, created. This is the meeting calendar. You have the monitoring tab, the documentation tab where you can upload documents, information about resource mobilization, and implementation checklist. And I will talk later about what is the implementation checklist. You can also manage the team. That is one of the great features of the portal that allows you to really have an overview of the users of your NTFC and in your reform tracker, and have always an updated list that you can download with all the users. Now that you know a little bit better what is the reform tracker, let's have a look at what has happened in the past 2 years. So in the past 2 years, we have hit a lot of key milestones. So I'm going to walk you through those. And this has been also possible through the support of 4 major donors to our program, and I will talk about it later as well. So in the Q4 of 2022, so 2 years ago, it was we started thinking about this possibility and working on this. We were able to launch the pilot in English and French in the East African community, thanks to the support of Trademark East Africa, who believe in us and our pilot and help us create this tool. Also super important was the high-level political support of the project to the regional, through a regional East African Community Directive, instructed national trade facilitation committees to use the reform tracker. So Burundi, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania were the countries that first joined on that quarter the reform tracker. And again, this was possible thanks to Trademark East Africa. A quarter later, at the beginning of 2021, we brought the reform tracker to many countries at once. Once we saw that the pilot was working, 2 further donors joined us, the United Kingdom, who is one of the biggest donors into the reform tracker, and also the German government. And it allows us to bring the reform tracker to a series of countries, 13 new countries, and also to launch the Spanish version of the reform tracker. So during that quarter, we really work a lot into bringing the reform tracker to all these countries. So with the new inputs, because this is something that you should know, the reform tracker is not a fixed tool. It's a tool that we keep on improving based on the inputs of the national trade facilitation committees we work with, and that's why it works so well, because it is adapted really to the needs of the countries. So with the new inputs from all these new countries, we identified new needs for the reform tracker, and we came up with new features. And this is what happened in the second quarter of 2021, where we created one of the key features, which is an automated needs assessment regarding the implementation of the WTO TFA, which is called the implementation checklist. Many of your countries went into needs assessments during the negotiation of the agreement, of the WTO trade facilitation agreement. So what we created is a automatic system that will allow you to go through a list and check if you are or not compliant with the agreement. So this, when it works the way it is, for example, if for the measure information available on the internet, if you know that this has been notified to the WTO TFA, the place where you can find all the relevant information, then you can click on the implementation item that has been done, and this will remain registered, and you will know to what extent you are really compliant with the agreement. Also, what happened that quarter in last September 2021 is that we started a quarterly meetings with the administrators of the reform tracker. So we put all the countries together and we share experience every 3 months. Normally we have meetings with over 120 practitioners, and it's a great experience of learning from each other on how to best introduce the reform tracker, use the reform tracker, how the reform tracker could help the committees. At the beginning of 2022, we introduced the UNCTAD implementation score. So the UNCTAD implementation score is a methodology that calculates a country's implementation rate of the trade facilitation agreement. So it gives you a real-time implementation score that you can see how it progresses over time. The way it works, it assigns weighted values to the agreement's provision based on how difficult each of the provisions are to be implemented. So normally, for example, if you use the data that are collected by the WTO TFA database, all the measures are considered to have the same weight. So and also the information is based on the implementation rate in that database is based on your notifications to the WTO, on your when do you think that you will be able to implement those measures. Whereas our implementation score, the one that is used in the reform tracker, gets updated as long as you have implemented a little aspect, a little item of the implementation checklist. It gives you a higher score each time, so it's a more real overview of what's really happening on the ground. And also it has this thing that it really considers how difficult measures are to be implemented. It gives us the attributes is the number of actors involved in implementation. So when a measure has a lot of actors involved, it's considered to be more difficult to be implemented. Also, the complexity of the activities involved in the implementation, it is much more difficult to implement a single window than to implement, for instance, advanced ruling. Or the legal nature of the provisions also. If a measure is just a recommendation, then it's not, let's say, that important in the implementation score than those measures that are mandatory. Also in that quarter, we launched the Portuguese version and our online course on the reform trackers, which allow us to have a more systematic approach on how we train people on the use of the reform tracker. So with all this, we also launched our statistics tab, and this little video shows you. So each country in the reform tracker has access to these statistics tabs that give you how an overview of how you're increasing your implementation score over time, how many of your reforms are by each category, by the status, the number of tasks that are still pending, how many changes are tracked in the reform tracker over time, so that you can have an overview of whether the reform tracker is used or not, how you're using the resource mobilization tab, if your users are active or not, and distribution of your users in all the reforms, as well as the agencies. You can have a look of how many of those agencies are from the private sector, how many users are per agency, and how is the distribution within the reform tracker, how many messages are exchanged through the reform tracker and the page visits, and also access to the sustainability score. You can also, all these statistics, you can download them as a Word document that you can use to distribute to the members of an NTFC before a meeting, for example, so that they can have like a report on the latest status. So moving ahead, in the second quarter of this year, we also came up with new features. One of the features is the downloading. We improved the overviews that you could download in Excel of all the agencies, the users, the reform, and the task. So here's, for example, an example. If you want to download all the reforms, it's just as simple as clicking on the icon. And then you can have an overview of the status of all the reforms by measure, by status, when they were updated last time in the reform tracker, and you can create a lot of diagrams and overviews that you might need. Also, wonderful thing that we did last quarter was the monthly newsletter, which is now distributed to all the users of the reform tracker in all the countries once per month, with an overview of the latest status, what has happened in the past month, what is new, which tasks are upcoming, etc. And also we have improved our chat so that when you, as I was explaining, so that when you send a message through the chat, if the person is not connected, the person will receive an email. Timor-Leste also joined in the Q2 of 2022, the Reform Tracker family. So what is the future going to bring us? Well, it's going to bring us some kind of new features. We are going to create a download center so that we have a better overview of where you can have all these different Excels I was showing you. We are going to have also a downloadable Gantt chart that will give you a timeline of the implementation of all the reforms. And we are also going to perform automated notifications that will make sure that no deadline, either for a task or for a reform, is missed, and that all the notifications to WTO TFA are sent on time. Finally, we are going to improve also the implementation checklist workflow to make it a little bit more user-friendly, and many other things based on the inputs that all the countries will give to us. Also, already in the planning, 11 new countries will join us next year, thanks to the support of the UK and the European Union that has allowed us to bring the reform tracker to a lot of small island developing states from all over the world, and this is really, really important for us. We have also in this last quarter, sorry, I forgot to mention this, created a personalized landing page. So when you enter the reform tracker, now you can see exactly what are my tasks, what are my teams, what things do I still have to do, etc. So everything really personalized to you as a stakeholder of trade facilitation. And also you can see in your task what is still pending, etc. And São Tomé and Príncipe and the Philippines also joined on the third quarter of 2022. So this has been the overview of the key milestones of the UNCTAD reform tracker. And finally, I want to talk about the results that we have got over the past 2 years. So we have over 2,000 users that have been added in the 22 countries that are currently using the reform tracker in the past 2 years, and around 250 have been trained through our online course. Also important to mention that in just 1 year, we start tracking this not at the beginning of the reform tracker, but really just a year ago. So in only 1 year, 150,000 page visits have been accumulated in the reform tracker, which represent over 300 daily page visits on average in the countries. Over 3,000 tasks have been planned in the 22 reform trackers that we have, which is around 13 tasks added on average every day in all the reform trackers in total. If we look at the average implementation score for the 22 countries, we can see how it has been improving over the years since we have been using it in the past year, actually. since we added this feature a little bit later. And currently, for the 22 countries that we have, the implementation score average is a little bit slightly over 60%. Also, very good to see that the 120 D&C provisions have marked as done, are marked as done in the reform tracker, which means that countries are really moving forward in the work of trade facilitation reforms. And the last message, but very, very important, that I want to share with you is that what we have observed over the past 2 years is that the reform tracker not only helps the NTFC Secretariat organize itself and organize the NTFC and monitor the reforms. The reform tracker has proven to be a key instrument to accelerate trade facilitation. Why? Because it has organized the work in a way that the creation of the reform teams and the allocation of the task, the accountability that is seen through the reform tracker had made it possible that people realize, okay, this is my task, this is what I need to do, and then things start moving forward. For even measures that were forgotten, no one were taking care of them, all of a sudden you have a reform team that is looking into that and trying to implement those. So it's been a great journey, and I'm looking forward for the future and what the future will bring us. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arantxa, for this presentation, for the information. I'm very happy to see that we are around 260 people in the meeting right now. So I hope you have all had a good introduction on what is the reform tracker, what are the features of the reform tracker, and how can the reform tracker help you. Arantxa mentioned that this can help to accelerate trade facilitation, but it is also a good governance tool. And as a matter of fact, good governance tools help your countries as well to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So I think we are achieving several goals and targets all at once by applying this. And I really look forward also to hear further presentations along the way. We are taking good notes of the questions that you are having in the chat and in the Q&A, and we will come back to those. But I would like to move on now to give a donor perspective. So let me hand over to Ms. Lauren Atkinson, who leads the WTO and trade facilitation team with Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs of the UK. Lauren oversees the UK's National Trade Facilitation Committee and also have the responsibility for leading UK's representation to the WTO Trade Facilitation Committee. So Lauren, welcome, and the floor is yours. We look forward to hear your intervention.
Thank you very much, Paul, and good morning, afternoon and evening to all the colleagues dialed in today. As Paul just mentioned, my name is Lauren Atkinson, and I lead on the UK's National Trade Facilitation Committee in His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, which is the UK's customs authority. I'm truly delighted to have been invited here for the celebration of the 2nd anniversary of UNCTAD's reform tracker. HMRC is part of the global customs family, and we've been very proud to support UNCTAD's empowerment programme since 2015. And we place a lot of value with working with our trade facilitation partners around the world to support the rollout of projects such as the Reform Tracker. I'll talk about the Reform Tracker in a little more detail in just a moment, but first I just wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge the importance of the TFA. So the agreement came into celebrated its 5th anniversary last year, and it's an important symbol for countries working together within the rules-based global trade system. And there's a reason why it's the only new multilateral agreement since the formation of the WTO. There's collective recognition that improving customs efficiencies can generate growth and prosperity. But clearly quality implementation is the important thing. And I'm going to draw on our experience of running our NTFC to share what I consider to be a crucial lesson in establishing a successful NTFC. And that's making sure that people, it's well supported by the people involved. So in the UK, we set up our NTFC in 2019. So it's a relatively new committee in comparison to some. However, this wasn't our first domestic trade facilitation forum, because between the years of 1970 and 2010, we had CITPRO, which was the UK's trade facilitation body. CITPRO stands for Simplifying Trade Procedures. It was a separate public body, and it had participants from across government and industry. And it provided a very strong voice for trade facilitation in the UK, as well as being very active in grassroots level and helping businesses to trade. In some ways, it acted as a model for the NTFC concept that we have today, but in 2010, it ceased as a part of a broader decision to cut the number of public bodies in the UK. This wasn't a reflection on CITPRO as an organisation, but more part of a broader decision to reduce public spending at the time. But thanks to the Trade Facilitation Agreement, we're now able to keep some form of it going, where the NTFC is protected as a permanent endeavour and enshrined in law. And I think it's really helpful to think of the NTFC as a permanent institution, which will exist as a forum beyond the implementation of the TFA. It's not just set up to implement one set of reforms, but it's a permanent advocate for trade facilitation, which tackles new challenges and new technologies to help facilitate trade and find new ways to improve. But I recognise, like all things, it's not always plain sailing with the NTFC, and it can take a lot of momentum. And as Arantxa mentioned earlier, a frequent change in personnel can also make it difficult to maintain the strong relationships that you've built across the NTFC membership. One of the most important things, I think, to keep momentum with the NTFC is to make sure that the people involved continue to stay engaged. This is something that's paramount to achieving progress in trade facilitation, and it's something that in the UK we're continuing to improve as time goes on. In the UK, our NTFC is attended by government and industry, and we have a dedicated secretariat and chairperson in place in order to make sure that we can maintain momentum between meetings. It's really important that my team as a secretariat keep active between meetings and building close relationships with those people across government and industry to ensure that we understand the reforms, to make sure that we understand the reality that's happening on the ground that our traders are experiencing, and to make sure that stakeholders are playing an active role in the meeting. Naturally, as trade facilitation reforms change and more continue to implement the agreement, we'll continue to need to keep momentum. So making sure that we have the right people at the table is paramount so we can continue to have rich and diverse conversations on trade facilitation. It's vital to maintain an engaged group of stakeholders so the NTFC can continue to be sustainable and effective, especially beyond TFA implementation. So Jan was talking earlier about his favourite TFA article, and I think mine really is Article 23.2, because I really do believe that NTFCs are the backbone of the global trade facilitation community. And I guess that's why the UK has remained dedicated to improving the NTFC, both domestically and internationally. We've warmly welcomed the developments of UNCTAD's empowerment programmes such as the Reform Tracker. And over the last year or so, we've seen the Reform Tracker emerge as a powerful and incredibly useful tool to support NTFCs in implementing the Trade Facilitation Agreement. As we all know, the articles themselves can be abstract and they give license for members to implement to their own context. And that's the real beauty of the Reform Tracker. It breaks down abstract ideas into specific tasks for specific teams who have specific responsibilities and implemented in a way that works for you and your administration. And even beyond TFA, we're seeing the reform tracker be creatively adapted to support trade reforms elsewhere across regional and continental agreements. But all that being said, the tool will really only continue to be powerful so long as we remain actively engaged. We'll only get out of it what we put into it, and it will only continue to have value if it's being used effectively and purposefully being adopted by NTFCs. So we should all continue to take ownership of the tool, to be proactive in driving forward the task, and to hold one another to account. Ultimately, to be the ambassadors for trade facilitation and to drive forward reform. So, as a final note to end on, I'd like to offer my congratulations on this wonderful second anniversary occasion. And thanks to all of you in the Reform Tracker community who are continuing to implement trade facilitation reform. And I wish you continued success. My thanks as well to UNCTAD for their continued commitment, expertise, and hard work and continue to drive forward this project. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and thank you for also providing us a insight in the way that the National Trade Facilitation Committee works in the UK and how the donor is seeing the work we are doing around the reform tracker. And once again, I should like to thank the UK for the support that you have provided for the development of this tool. We will continue to appreciate this. We continue to work with you, and I think many of the countries participating here are benefiting from this. So thank you very much. We have, as you all will see on the screen now, just launched the little poll that there is. Are you already a user of the reform tracker? Yes or no? You can click and we will collect the data. Now, after this, we will go to a series of presentations by user countries. But before that, we have a few questions that we could take so we don't accumulate all the questions for the end. So the first question I would like to ask, and I think it's directed to Arantxa. Could you expand a bit on how the task feature works in the reform tracker? Who is involved in this work? Arantxa.
Thank you very much. So the way the task feature works is that first you need to have the reform. Let's take a very simple example. We will take the example of advanced rulings. Advanced rulings, normally it's a measure that's done by customs in a country, and you could define, okay, who is inside that reform, who are the people that are really going to implement the measure of advanced ruling. So imagine 5 people in customs are allocated that as part of that reform teams that are going to implement that measure. So once you have allocated those that team, for example, in our example, 5 people, then you go to the task tab, and there you can just create a new task where you can put all the information. For example, okay, we need to draft standard operating procedures for the advanced ruling. And this task, then you can tell who is going to do that task and until when. So you put the deadline to that. This way, depending on each team, you will have teams that will use it to really put a lot of little tasks inside, so that really everything is attributed to the different reform team members. And others that we just put like broader tasks so that they know who is managing, let's say, each part of the project, but not really going into detail. I hope I was able to answer the question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arantxa. We have several countries or participants that are asking, we are a country interested in the reform tracker. We are not yet a partner country implementing the reform tracker. How can we be involved? I think the best way to do this is to send us an email or a communication. It would be better to do that in a follow-up to this meeting. So I see, for instance, Ghana has expressed interest, Equatorial Guinea, Suriname, and a number of others. After this meeting, or send us an email. We are very interested, obviously, in working with more countries on implementing the reform tracker. Arantxa already mentioned in her introduction that we are going to expand the number of countries over the next year with another 10, 12 countries. This will already be quite a heavy workload for us, and I want to manage expectations. We cannot take on all countries at the same time. Nevertheless, we are keen on implementing the reform tracker with more countries. So let us start a dialogue. Send us an email expressing your interest. My colleague will, in the chat, indicate our email address where you can contact us. And that way we can start talking about what we can do. One thing that is necessary is that we need also to find a donor for implementing the reform tracker if countries can't pay for this themselves. We are working with certain donors in certain regions. For instance, in Central Africa, we have a project working with a number of countries. Now, in this project, for the time being, we do not have room for implementing any reform trackers, but we are discussing together with the regional organization ECAS and a donor on how we can do that. So hopefully we will be able to do that also in the future. But again, write to us. We will be happy to discuss with you, and we see how we can assist you with the reform tracker or any of the other trade facilitation tools that we have that Jan mentioned in his introduction. So let us now turn to some use cases, some real life cases of those partner countries that we are working with. And I would like to start with a presentation by Kenya. The presentation will be done by Nujoma Riki Tadeo and Samson Garama. Nujomo is a Senior Trade Development Officer with the Ministry of Investments, Trade and Industry, and part of the Secretariat of the National Trade Facilitation Committee. And so is Samson, Senior Trade Development Officer, Ministry of Investments, Trade and Industry. For these following presentation, each of the presenters or each of the countries presenting have 15 minutes for their presentation. And please continue in the chat and Q&A to post your questions, and we will open for some questions after each of the presentation. So Nujoma and Samson, the floor is yours, please.
All right, let me just, thank you. Please confirm if you can hear me.
Yes, we can, loud and clear, and we can see you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Thank you so much. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. It's evening here in Kenya. It's 5 p.m. Yes, so thank you so much. My name is Samson Garama, trade officer, as we've been introduced. Alongside my colleague Rike, we will just share the 15 minutes. We will be brief enough. Yes, so I'm just here to share the Kenyan experience in regards to using the reform track system to implement the trade facilitation agreement under the umbrella, or rather under the oversight of the National Trade Facilitation Committee. Yes, so please, you could scroll to the second slide.
Could we get the presentation up in full size? Can somebody do that?
Yes, that would be helpful.
It's not in full size?
Not yet. Could enable editing probably and then enlarge.
Let me just retry.
Okay.
Screen one. Ah.
All right.
Now you can see it.
Yeah, I think for me that's okay. Probably maybe member the participants, if they are okay, then we can continue. As you sort out that, maybe I can just continue. Just a brief background. Kenya has a National Trade Facilitation Committee that, of course, is responsible for overseeing implementation of the TFA in Kenya, and we have under the NTFC, that's the larger committee comprising of around 60 institutions or agencies that are implementing the trade facilitation agreement. So under the larger NTFC, we have 3 thematic working groups. That's the customs procedures. That one is headed by the Kenya Revenue Authority. We have the information and transparency the thematic working group that is headed by, or rather it's chaired by, the Kenya Trade Network Agency. Of course, this is the agency that is housing the Kenya single window or the Info Trade portal. Then we have the 3rd thematic working group, that's Port and Transit Trade, that's chaired by the Shippers Council of East Africa. This one now, this one is unique, a little bit unique, because it's chaired by a private sector organization. Then we have the 4th one, that's Rules and Regulations, that's chaired by the State Department for Trade, where my colleague Rike and I work. Yes, we can proceed to the other slide. Yes. Now, each of the thematic working group has its own specific theme-based work plan. What we did is we did a study. We did a study in regards to how far we are in terms of implementing the trade facilitation agreement in the country, and from that study, we of course we got a consultant to do that study. And then we had a report, the needs assessment report. It is from this needs assessment report that now we derived work plans from the recommendations. Of course, the needs assessment report pointed out some gaps that were there in terms of implementing the trade facilitation agreement. So from the recommendations, now we came up with a work plan. So we have specific, or rather theme-based work plans. To each of the 4 thematic working groups. So each thematic working group has a work plan, depending on the recommendations from the study, or rather from the report. So each TWIG has its own specific theme-based work plan that it implements over a period of time. Now, the work plans were derived, of course, from the needs assessment. We normally hold meetings, regular meetings from the thematic working groups, just to see and just to get statuses of how far we are in terms of implementing the work plan, because it is the work plans, the thematic working groups meetings that now do the exact monitoring of the work plans, how the implementations, how the institutions, the trade facilitation agreement implementing agencies are doing. So every other time I think it's in 2 weeks, or rather monthly meetings, just to see how we are doing in terms of implementing the work plan. So we have regular meetings every now and then, just to see. Of course, the chair can call for ad hoc meetings any other time to deliberate on how far we are, how far has this measure gone. Of course, with signing ourselves. So we very deliberate on seeing that we are implementing the work plans. Note that the reform track system has facilitated the implementation of measures process in Kenya in special working groups. So what this means is, apart from the 4 thematic working groups, we have we have other special thematic working groups or other special working groups that are focused. They are focused on, most of them is the simplification work that is going on. For example, we have avocado, we have coffee, we have fish, we have tea. So what we do is through the single window that is housed at the Kenya Trade Network Agency, that is now chairing thematic working group number 2 on information and transparency. So once in a while, we try to review, because now the system, the info trade portal that I've said is housed at the Kenya Trade Network Agency, is it has the procedures for imports and export. So we try as much as possible, and it is a process that is ongoing. We try to lessen the procedures that are required for exporting, say, avocado, say, fish, coffee, tea. So every now we call ourselves for a meeting, and then we try to analyze, of course, with the players in that particular sector, or rather that particular value chain. Let's say the fish value chain. So we call the players there, and then we try to deliberate and see, okay, these are the measures. Say 50, we have the procedures are around, let's say 20. So we want to, we have a view of, we want to reduce them so that we have making them very few at the end of the day, so that it becomes very easy for us. If you want to export avocado, then you don't have so many processes along the value chain. So that's what we do. So we have, if you log into my colleague Rike will just show you how we've been doing a few of them, so that we see. You will see from our dashboard, we have so many working groups that they are special working groups, just to see that we are simplifying some of the measures. Yes, so you can go to the next slide. Yes, then based on specific way forwards on the meetings deliberations, the TWIG's secretaries assign tasks. Yes, from the meetings of the thematic working groups, of course, we deliberate and then we assign ourselves duties. Now it is like, for me, I am the secretary for the second thematic working groups on information and transparency. So whatever deliberations we come up with, I now assign each of the reform team from now in the system. I assign them and then send reminders so that they can act on them. So because they can access the system and they receive the reminders, now they are able to act on them. Of course, with my follow-up still, so that I can make sure by the time we have another meeting, we are reporting positively that such and such assignments have been done successfully. Now, according to the statutory instruments establishing the NTFC in Kenya, it is required that the NTFC holds 4 meetings per year. Yes, the larger National Trade Facilitation Committee, we normally have quarterly meetings. Now, it is in these quarterly meetings that the thematic working groups, the 4 thematic working groups have to report. We report on the progress of specific measures, because our measures, we assigned them, they are theme-based. So we have those that belong to the customs procedures, those that belong to the information and transparency. So we report how far we've gone and what's pending. Yes, also the report is to be presented in each quarter, reflects the level of implementation of the trade facilitation agreement in the country as of that particular quarter, as well as the measures that are pending and those whose implementation is ongoing. Yes, we could go to the next one. Yes, now, for us, so the sequence is we begin at the thematic working group stage. We have several meetings. Then at the end of the quarter, now we convene the larger National Trade Facilitation Committee. Now that one has many members. I said around 60 or so. So we report that, of course, the 6 are the ones that are divided into the 4 thematic working groups. So now we convene and report on how far we are in terms of implementing the measures in our work plans. And then we see overall we have a report, an overall saying now this is how far we are, and then this is what's pending, and this is what's going on. That's on every quarter. And then at the end of the financial, or at the end of the year, now we see for the year what we have done and what's pending is and what's ongoing still. Now, in doing that, there are a few challenges on our side. Of course, the key challenge, the main challenge has been maintaining the momentum for usage of the tracker by members of the NTFC. Most of the time, you see members tend to leave it to the NTFC secretary. I belong to the National Trade Facilitation Secretariat. So you see, most of the times, because you see, as a member of the secretariat, you tend to do more of the assigning tasks, sending reminders. So people tend to relax a little bit. So they tend to think, this work belongs to the secretariat. So we don't have really to do much of logging in and seeing what is there. Because now if you see people delaying, it is my duty to send reminders and to even call them by phone and ask them, hey, can you please log in to the reform track and see there's a task that is pending for you. So that has been a challenge a little bit. The second one is the reform track system is a heavy internet user, and it is not always easy to hold meetings on the system. If your internet is a little bit shaky, you will not be able to navigate through the system because it requires very strong network, or rather very strong internet for it to for you to be able to navigate through the system. So that's another challenge. Yes, so we could go to the conclusion that I can give my colleague to finish up. Yes, in conclusion, in a nutshell, the reform track system has been a game changer for the Kenyan Trade Facilitation, National Trade Facilitation Committee in its work, overseeing implementation of the Trade Facilitation Agreement in many ways. Because as I have said, it has improved on communication. It's easy to send emails since already the members are defined in the system, and you have already your reform team. You have the details of your reform team. It is easier to you just click one button and all of them can get the reminders and the emails. So it is quite easy to communicate through the system. Members of the NTFC are also able to access all the documents. Of course, every other meeting we hold, we make sure you upload the documents so that the members now can see if they want to download them. It is possible they can just download and maybe keep reference of discussions. Members of a specific thematic working group are able to receive reminders of tasks set. Yes, I've said that. And then the RT system has over time seen more features. We have, at least it is now easy we don't have really to rely on physical trainings. It is easy. You can just log in and get some tutorials, probably forgotten how to navigate through a certain interface. You just have, we have the tutorials. So it has been even made simpler. And another one is that because every member is able to see what is in our dashboard, if I've been assigned a certain task and I don't do it, everyone else is seeing this task belongs to so and so, and it is not done. So sometimes, even if I'm not feeling like doing that task, and because I know everyone is monitoring me, including my seniors, somehow I tend to do it because I know I might be held liable, or rather I might be held accountable and asked, why have you not done this? Because I'm seeing from the system it's not done. So it puts some positive pressure, kind of a thing. So that's a good pressure, and it helps tasks not to lay there pending for a long time. Yes, you can proceed to the next. Next. Also, it has made it easier for senior government officers. Yes, our bosses can also monitor what we are doing, and because they are also admins and they have some additional privileges, they are able to once in a while they can just pull that report of the status from the system. They can download and see the progress overall, how the national trade facilitation is doing, or rather how the implementation work of the trade facilitation agreement is going in the country. So that's a good thing that we are benefiting, because we know our seniors are also keeping us in check and everyone in check, and we are answerable for anything. If the implementation work is a bit lagging behind, it is easier for them to check from the system and put some little bit of pressure, some positive pressure, so that we can do our work. Yes, I think the remaining 4 minutes I want to give my colleague. I think he will also be very brief so that we don't exceed the given time. Yes.
Thank you so much, Samson. And good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone, wherever you are.
TK, there is a little bit of an echo. Maybe you have to, you are connected with your devices or something. There is echo in your connection.
Sorry, I think it's been sorted.
Yes,
Is
go
it
ahead.
now? Okay, thank you. I say good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone. This is Rike Tadaya from Kenya, State Department for Trade. You will allow me just briefly for the few minutes to, not to present anything, but to share now our dashboard, the dashboard of our Kenyan NTFC, the tracker, the reform tracker. From my window, I hope everybody, you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Thank you. Great. So my colleague has taken us through the NTFC generally, but I want to maybe mention only one thing that is unique about the reform, the TWGs, that is the thematic working group, that the thematic working group on Port and Transit Charter is led by the private sector, as he has said, and it's also a working group that is that checks the others that are led by government to see if they are fully implementing the WTO TFA. So this is my window. As you can see, there are specific tabs. If you log in from the Kenyan side, there is an info thread. Info thread, as he has said, is the KenTrade photo, where you can get the information on imports, exports. So it is linked to the Kenyan reform tracker. There is an info thread photo. It's also linked to the ACFTA. It's also linked to the tripartite free trade area, and also linked to the EAC. If you click the EAC one, you'll be able to get some of the protocol, COVID-19 EAC, Custom Union EAC treaty, and everything about the EAC. So it is linked to other agreements and another protocol within the region. And secondly, as you can see, you can there is my details, my profile. You can see my profile in the admin section. This is where you can see the working group. You can see the reform. You can see the users. From this side, you can see the agencies. And again, I know Sanchez has taken us through, but I want to maybe focus on our working groups. My colleague has mentioned that we have 4 working groups. That is the custom procedure, transparency and information, rules and regulations, port and transit. But again, we have specific other special working groups. For example, there is a specification special working group on coffee. There is another one on fiber. There is another one on tea. There is one on horticulture, nuts. Another one on fish, avocado. So maybe I can just pick one of these. Let's say coffee. So you see in this coffee working group, their description of an activity they were supposed to do. That is, the activity was the change request letter to an application form. So you see, this is the description of it, and then the reform teams that were involved are listed there. The tasks that are supposed to be undertaken listed there, and then now the meetings. This is where you can set the meetings for the particular, for the specific working group. You can set any date, then you send reminders to the team. This is where you have the monitoring, and this is where you put the documentation and also the resource mobilization. I know this part Sanchez has already taken us through. So these are the many working groups that we have as a country, but the 4 ones are the main one, and the other ones are more specific. So maybe just briefly to take us through the statistics of the country. I know we've been told that the average statistics so far of all the countries in the reform tracker is 60.8%, almost 61%, but Kenya is still at 40.3%. As you can see, this is now our implementation status. So far we are at 40.43, and a lot of activities are ongoing. As soon as we update, we may be able to reach 50 or probably 60. And then on that, you can also see the reforms, the statistics, the number of reforms that have been included in the reform tracker, the reforms by agencies, the ones that are supposed to be done by the particular agencies are indicated there, the ones that are done, the ones that are ongoing, the ones that are proposed, approved, and so forth. And then we also have the users. The users are the individual users from the agencies. As you can see, there are top 3 most users in the country are listed there, and now the other users. We also have the agencies, all the agencies of the NTFC, that is the National Trade Facilitations are listed. That is around 60, but we also have others that are not gazetted as members of the NTFC, but again registered under the reform tracker. Then we have communication. This is now our statistics in terms of communication, the number of emails that have been sent, the number of meetings, the chat messages, number of page visits, and you can see it has been gathered since 1st of December 2021 to I believe to date. So in a nutshell, that is our NTFC. Now here we have the update on our NTFC and the details of the NTFC. So in a nutshell, that is how our reform tracker looks, and it has really been a game changer, especially in terms of sending notifications and as well as reminders, as well as now setting up the meetings. Otherwise, thank you so much. I will wish to end up there, and back to you, Paul.
Thank you very much to both of you for this detailed presentation and for the insights on how you have advanced that. There was a specific question to Kenya in the Q&A and asked to our Kenyan friends, please explain how the Trade Information Portal project facilitate movement of coffee and flowers to the UK. Now, what we are doing today is on the reform tracker and not so much on the Trade Information Portal. I think in the future, we will have also similar presentations on the Trade Information Portal. So I would actually like if we today can focus on the reform tracker. But as you just saw and what Ricky just presented, in Kenya, they have made special working groups for special procedures that are important in their import and export. And as Ricky just presented, there is a special working group on, for instance, export of coffee, going through some of the procedures. And this is where it is really important to use the reform tracker for your specific needs and tasks. And you, as you saw from the Kenyan reform tracker, it is very modular and adaptable to your specific needs. I don't know, Ricky or Samson, if you want to copy or if you want to comment on this specific question on the Trade Information Portal. This is a whole issue by itself, but please, if you have 2 minutes to respond to this.
Thank you, Paul. I think you just answered correctly, and from the dashboard of our trade reform tracker, there is a link to the InfoTrade portal where it lists the procedures to different markets. So all the information regarding to export and imports will be obtained, can be obtained from that portal. Thank you.
Very good. Now, thank you very much, Kenya. I hope that you have all learned from this very good example. And as it was mentioned at the beginning, this whole initiative started out in the countries of East Africa with the support of Trademark East Africa. And we were very happy to see how this has developed. It also leads to a question that was asked in the chat about how can this be used for regional organizations, for regional collaboration? Well, actually, with the East African countries, we are right now looking at implementing or seeing if we can implement a regional reform tracker. Each of the countries have a reform tracker, have in their reform tracker included their trade facilitation reforms. And if you are part of a larger regional organization or economic collaboration organization, then there will be a sense in using a similar reform tracker tool for some of the regional collaboration and seeing how you can go forward. So we are going to look at that with East Africa, but also again, if any other regional organizations are interested in that, we are certainly interested in talking to them. I know that Chieka from Central America has also posed a question. Let us discuss how we can do that. There was also a question, is there any training coming with this? Yes, this is a package. It's not only the IT tool that we provide, but we provide implementation of the IT tool, training of the involved stakeholders, and we also accompany you along the way with the implementation. We will provide also support for having, building all of the reform elements in the reform tracker. We will work with people in the country on from the various authorities in including the reforms that are relevant. A lot of them, if we look at the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement, will be the Category C measures. But if you look at regional issues or national issues, we will work with you and accompany you along the way. In many countries, we have hired national consultants to do the bulk of the work on identifying issues, describing these, and getting them included in the reform trackers. And there is continuous training going on. There was also a question about, can we have a reform tracker for evaluation? We are very happy for any country that's interested to demonstrate the reform tracker. And we can even, with the permission of some of the countries maybe that are in the presentations here, use their reform trackers as examples. We cannot open up for other countries to see individual country reform trackers and have access to these for a long time. These are national properties, but if neighboring countries want to assist each other, we are very happy also to facilitate that in a kind of South-South collaboration. But I would suggest, if you are interested to see how a reform tracker works, contact us. We will make a concrete demonstration for your country, for your National Trade Facilitation Committee. And let me stress again, these tools are mainly for national or regional trade facilitation committees. And then there was a question also about more general TF support. I saw there were a couple of countries that asked this. How can we get support on implementing various of the trade facilitation obligations under TFA? Again, we are happy to talk to you about that. And if we cannot help you, we can certainly assist in identifying either contacts at WTO, other organizations, or other donors that can help. So don't hesitate to contact us on this. I would like then to go to the next speaker in order that we don't delay the whole process too much. And the next speaker is Moteba Maligbeng from Lesotho. Moteba is a good and long-time friend of ours. Good to see you, Moteba. and she is manager of regional trade in the Ministry of Trade and Industry of Lesotho. And she is also the national coordinator on trade facilitation and serves in the National Trade Facilitation Committee. How is the weather in Maseru, Moteba? Everything is good, I hope, and the floor is yours for a presentation.
Hello, Paul. Thank you so much. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much, and greetings to everybody. Unfortunately, I'm not in Maseru today, and I can't even put on my camera where I am. There will be disturbances at the background, but I guess all is good and all is well.
Very good. So please go ahead.
Okay. Do I share my presentation from my side?
You can if your connection is stable.
I can also share if you prefer the Moteba.
That is maybe better if Moteba's connection is not so stable.
It is. I'm afraid it is not so stable, but I think it can take us up to the end of the presentation at least.
You should be able to see it now. Can you see it?
Oh,
please confirm.
Okay. I can see it. I thought I was the one sharing it. Thank you so much. I'll be sharing with you colleagues today the experience that we had as the Lesotho National Trade Facilitation Committee on the implementation of the reform tracker. And first and foremost, as NTFC, we have a vision that by 2024, I'm still on the first slide.
Yes. Sorry, somehow it does not wait. Oh, it has erased the slide, that's why. Okay.
Whatever, maybe you can.
Okay, that by 2024 would have reduced time to import and export by 60%, and also the cost of importing and exporting would have reduced by 20% for improved cross-border trade and promotion of inclusive trade growth. This is the vision of NTFC as per our trade facilitation roadmap. And the outline of our presentation today will give an overview of the NTFC, then the reform tracker, the benefits, and then we'll have a conclusion thereafter. For some of us who might be wondering as to where Lesotho is, we thought we would provide you with this map that shows there you can see Lesotho, and surrounding Lesotho, it's South Africa. It has actually surrounded the whole of Lesotho. We are coexisting with our only one good neighbor. We can go to the next one. The National Trade Facilitation Committee was established by a cabinet memoranda, or what we call a decree, in 2017 as a subcommittee under the Lesotho Coordinating Committee on Trade. It has the objective of to support modernization of trade facilitation procedures and processes in line with the national trade and development priorities. It also facilitates for coordination in implementation of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement. It also advocates for incorporation of TF plans in ministries and in agencies. In short, our NTFC is, we can refer to it as WTO Plus, because it looks at the implementation of the WTO Trade Facilitation Agreement and also other national trade facilitation initiatives. Its governance structure is such that we have, as already mentioned, the Lesotho Coordinating Committee on Trade. This is a committee that is chaired by the Honorable Minister of Trade and Industry, and is composed of the principal secretaries to a number of ministries, government agencies, and also has a private sector in it. And the committee, through the Honorable Minister of Trade, reports to Cabinet. And under the LCCT, we have several other subcommittees, including the National Trade Facilitation Committee, which is now a subcommittee under LCCT. NTFC also has its own secretariat, which is housed under the Ministry of Trade and Industry. We have under the NTFC a number of technical working groups. We have some that are ad hoc, and currently we only have 2 that are standing, which is the heads of border agencies and the technical working group on legal issues. The heads of border agencies has been a committee that has been existing even before the formal establishment of NTFC, and with the NTFC coming formally being established, it is now a subcommittee under it. As far as the composition is concerned, we have under NTFC around 32 agencies. This include the public sector and the private sector. And as already mentioned, we have MTI, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, as our secretariat. And we have a co-chairmanship, which is currently the Ministry of Trade and Industry and the private sector. NTFC meets quarterly with the provision to have special meetings as and when needed. We can have those ad hoc meetings to attend to urgent matters that could arise before the quarterly meetings. We also have partners that we could be referring to as development partners that assist in them, that support our trade facilitation initiatives and the committee as well, and the functioning of such. We have the WTO as our partner. We have the ITC. We have done several needs assessments during the times of negotiations and after. We have also World Bank assisting with the implementation of various measures. We have also technical expertise from the WCO. We also have the EU SADC Trade-Related Facility Fund. And then we also have UNCTAD, who is also our very good partner. The next one. Okay. As we facilitate trade nationally, we have indicated we have the National Strategic Development Plan 2 and the National Trade Policy Framework that has identified interventions to strengthen our trade facilitation through efficiencies of cross-border flows in Lesotho. Under the National Trade Facilitation Committees, steps have been undertaken to identify trade facilitation measures across all government agencies so that we speed up the processes both on import and export, from applying for a permit to acquiring a license to final release and clearance of goods. And this we undertook, and then came the development of the trade facilitation roadmap that serves as a guide to implementation of our reforms, their monitoring and resource mobilization. And this trade facilitation roadmap, we were able to develop with technical assistance from UNCTAD at the time when the National Trade Facilitation Committee was undertaking the empowerment programs for NTFCs. We can move on. NTFC has done a lot of work in overseeing the implementation of trade facilitation initiatives in Lesotho. We have the Trade and Information Portal that was developed in 2013. And in 2020, we saw the relaunch of it with a new phase and new functions on it. That was the overseer was the National Trade Facilitation Committee. We also have the Preferred Trader Program, which is SACU-wide, the Southern African Customs Union program. And we are, as Lesotho, as a member of SACU, we are implementing that Preferred Trader Program, wherein we are able to give benefits to our compliant traders, benefits in terms of speedy clearances and ease of movement of their goods in and out of Lesotho. We also have the e-tariff. There is also the single window, which we are implementing. We have now completed the first phase of the single window, where we have connected we have connected 2 agencies, but we are supposed to have connected 4 out of the 12 that are still to be connected. We are left with 8, and the second phase is due to start. We also have the SACU Trade Facilitation Program that is still under development within SACU, and work on this one is overseen by the National Trade Facilitation Committee. As already indicated, we have the Trade Facilitation Roadmap. We also undertook the UNCTAD Empowerment Program, and now we have the UNCTAD Reform Tracker. The journey that we undertook in the development of the Lesotho Reform Tracker began officially on 23rd August 2021. And in that process, the first and initial stages were confirmation of agencies and members of NTFC. And then there was also the setting up of reform teams and facilitators. In this instance, it came to our realization that some of the experts were not necessarily NTFC members, but when we looked at the WTO TFA agreement, we realized we needed those experts to work on various measures of the agreement. And then that's when we undertook the exercise of setting up the reform teams with those, with some experts being facilitators. And then there was the data collection, where we had the situational and gap analysis forms. This one was to give us a baseline of where we were in terms of our implementation, what the gaps were. And then from those gaps, that is where we were able to identify activities that we needed to be undertaking so that we are fully compliant. And now after that process, we went into the system to update the system with this information that we collected and all the supporting documentation on each and every measure that we have in the tracker. And then at that time also there was training of the users of the system, who were the reform teams, as well as NTFC members as well. We had initial trainings on the use of the reform tracker. As it is now, as of the 16th November 2022, in the reform tracker, we have 42 reforms. And then we have reforms that have been approved, accounting for 9.5%. And we have those at 33.3, which are done. And we have 57.14 ongoing. According to the system, we have round about 85 users, 53 of them as NTFC members. Then we have 7 admins and supervisors. This is because our roles in the tracker are different. The admins and supervisors have more roles and more access than any other user, just ordinary users. Like even in the case where we were saying we have those reform teams, when you are a facilitator for that team, you have more access, you can do more than an ordinary user. Like if we were to be updating on our tasks, it cannot be done by any member, but we, as a member, you can have, as long as you have access to the tracker, you can have access to the information that is already there. But as far as the changes are concerned, you need to either be a supervisor, an admin, or a facilitator to undertake certain tasks that would need to do changes into the tracker. We have 25 disabled accounts. Some of these are the people whom we gave temporary access to. In other instances, you would find we have a consultant who would need certain information on our implementation and would grant that access temporarily. And in some instances, these are colleagues who were confirmed as NTFC members or as users, but with time we realized they have moved, as we are well aware. As people, we are always on the move. So some accounts have been disabled. And then we have around 23 active users. And we have the top users there from the agencies, being the Lesotho Revenue Authority, now called Revenue Services Lesotho, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and of importance, among the top users, we have the Lesotho Textile Exporters Association, which is a private sector association. We can move to the next one. And the good works that we have done, there were challenges in undertaking this. Mostly financial resources towards implementation of our reforms. In a number of instances, would prefer to have more of grants than loans to implement our trade facilitation reforms. We also have challenges with the staff turnover affecting the membership and capacity building of members of the committee and also members of the reform teams and facilitators. We had and we still have the problem with connectivity. Most of the time, we need to be doing things online, and our internet connection for some members, mostly it is a problem. And also because the reform tracker, there's a function that we can also be having meetings on the reform tracker, but that has not been possible because the reform tracker needs stable or high bandwidth. It needs stable connectivity, of which for some of us it's been a challenge. Even most of the time when we have to just go to update the task in the reform tracker, it will just open for you for 2 seconds, then it's gone. You have to log in again and again. We have been mostly on the side of the public sector, wherein our internet connectivity source is one. You would realize, you'd find that we are having those connectivity challenges most of the time. And then the provision of data, both for online meetings and for our access, is always a challenge. There is also this challenge of virtual fatigue. I think in most instances when we have to undertake the capacity building initiatives like now on the use of the reform tracker, wherein UNCTAD would be holding sessions so that users and members are able to use efficiently the reform tracker. You would find the attendance not so good. I think as people, we have realized that it is important to have the virtual meetings and trainings, but there comes a time when the fatigue is just too much and leading to non-commitment by most members. And those have been the challenges thus far. Maybe the other time we need to be having trainings, they need to be physical, just for a change. Next slide. When we come to the benefits of the tracker, despite those challenges that we have had, the reform tracker has improved transparency in the implementation of the TFA, the WTO TFA specifically, because as users and as members who have access to the tracker, we are able to see and track the activities in there. And I think if we did not have the tracker, we would not even be able to see our implementation status. It would need us to have a separate exercise where we would need a consultant or technical assistance for somebody to actually go from agency to agency to see how far we have implemented. But with the use of a tracker, it's transparent, it is there. We are able to see whose task is overdue, who is to do what and by which time. It has also improved our public-private dialogue. From the tracker, the information is readily available there. 25% of agencies that have access to the tracker represent the private sector. And also what we have done as a conscious decision is that we have 60% of the reforms that include private sector. You know, there's a saying that there's nothing for us without us. Actually, as we are facilitating trade, we are doing it for the benefit of our private sector. They are the ones who are in business, not the public sector, but we have a duty and a role to facilitate for them. So when they are part of the process, we are able to do those activities that will have an impact and enable freer trade for them. So in those instances, you would find most of the activities as a public sector, we have a bigger role, and the private sector has been included so that they are able to ask relevant questions to those tasks that we haven't done. They are overseen as in those implementation. They are part of the team. And also the reform tracker has enhanced our coordination and collaboration. We also have as a standing agenda of NTFC, the issues of the reform tracker, like the reform tracker is able to generate monthly reports so that for every quarter we would have at least 2 months of reports, or in some instances, I think there will be 3. Also, wherein we'll be able to check and monitor that our implementation as per the reports that would have been generated by the system. And also, as we interrogate those reports, then it means we are creating even more awareness to the use of the tracker and also to the overall implementation and undertaking of the activities and the milestones that we have set for ourselves as NTFC, as agencies in the trade facilitation space. It is also...
Moteva, can we move towards the end so we also can have the other presenters give a chance?
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
We also see it as a very effective monitoring tool. That is because it gives and shows us our status and gaps, etc. We can move on to the next. In conclusion, we are simply reiterating that the reform tracker has improved on the elements of coordination and monitoring of our trade facilitation reforms. We will be able to achieve the efficiency, simplification, and harmonization through the use of the tracker. What is also important is the continued training and capacity building for the private sector, public sector, as well as managing change processes in order to make a significant contribution to our overall trade performance, and of course, the use of the tracker. Next slide. We are saying, lastly, as stakeholders who love trade facilitation, if you need more information about importing, exporting, and doing business in Lesotho, you can visit our trade and information portal at www.lesothotradeportal.org.ls. And thank you so much for having listened to our presentation. I thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mothiba. And in particular, thank you also for highlighting some of the challenges. It's important also to be transparent and to share information about this. We are still at the relatively early stage of the reform tracker, and there are always some teething problems. And it's important that we share this kind of information and that we can adapt to some of the challenges that countries are seeing. So thank you for this, and we are working on many of the issues that you highlighted. Again, there has been some questions about how can we get access to the reform tracker, how can we benefit from this? There were also questions on the cost. I would suggest again, contact us so we can discuss the specific needs of national trade facilitation committees to use reform trackers, how it can be implemented in your respective countries, because there are different solutions to all countries. We still have 3 presenters, and we have also a little, so to say, award ceremony to do. So in order to try and stay as much as possible within the 45 minutes that are remaining, I would like to move on to the next presenter, if you allow me. So next up, we have a presentation from Honduras. Honduras has been one of the very active countries in implementing the reform tracker as well. And what we have seen also in Honduras is that the political support that there has been in Honduras on the implementation has been very important. So it's my pleasure to invite Karen Sosa from Honduras. She is the technical negotiator in trade facilitation and coordinator of the technical group of the National Trade Facilitation Committee, and also the technical secretariat for the National Committee, under the direction of the Undersecretary of Economics, Integration and Foreign Trade of the Secretary of Economic Development. So Karen, the floor is yours, please.
Muchas gracias, un gusto en saludarles. Para mí es un honor estar aquí, agradeciendo a la Junta primeramente por la oportunidad, así como el apoyo, ¿verdad? Y financiamiento de lo que es la República de Alemania, así como del Reino Unido, ¿verdad? Que se está sumando a esta gran tarea de lo que es la implementación de esta plataforma que ha venido a beneficiar a los países que la usamos. Tengo una pequeña presentación para hablarles un poco de lo que es, vamos a ver, de lo que es la implementación, como la experiencia nuestra implementando lo que es el rastreador de reformas. No sé, ¿me confirman si se mira la pantalla?
Está abriendo, está abriendo. Seguro
Okay.
ya. Aún se ve oscuro, pero seguramente en unos minutos.
Ok, no sé, permítanme un segundito. ¿Todavía no se mira, Roxana?
We don't see it yet, but if we have it, we could also put it on the screen.
Sí, la puedo compartir, Karen, si quieres, si gustas.
Si me ayuda, Roxana, a compartir pantalla, por favor.
Sí, desde luego. Entonces, sí, deja de compartir y ya yo empiezo.
Sí.
So Karen, if you can press the stop sharing, it should be on the top of your screen, probably.
And can you see my screen now?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Oh, now it is.
No, it is. Okay. Okay, I will
It-
start again.
It was just there and now it disappeared again.
Okay. Now I
Here
think
we
it's-
are. And Karen, if you could stay within the 15 minutes, that would be great. Thank you.
Karen, puedes comenzar. I'm afraid we lost connection.
It seems so. So let's move to the next presenter and then hope that Karen will connect.
Okay.
Paul, you're muted.
So let's move to the next presentation and we come back to Karen's presentation when we have the connection. So the next presentation is by Namibia. It's another good example of how the Reform Tracker has helped in the national implementation of trade facilitation, and also how it has helped the NTFC to manage the implementation of trade facilitation. And for Namibia, the presenter will be Ms. Johanna Amokusho, who works with the National Trade Facilitation Committee. She's a former national consultant for UNCTAD and has supported the Reform Tracker implementation in Namibia. Johanna is another long-time partner with UNCTAD, and I'm pleased to give you the floor, Johanna. The floor is yours, and please try and stay within the 15 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Paul Hansen. I would like to confirm, or you to confirm for me, if my presentation is can be seen at the end.
Yes, we can. If you could put it on full screen, that would be great.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone else, and happy second anniversary on the Reform Tracker. Speaking is Johanna Amokusho. I'm the Principal Customs and Excise Officer from the Namibia Revenue Agency. Equally, I'm also the former Reform Tracker National Consultant, of which I have ran through the situation and gap analysis when it comes to the measures of the WTO TFA. And I'm privileged to present to you the Reform Tracker journey, or the experience in the Namibia context when it comes to the Reform Tracker tool. This is an amazing project management tool that one can really take advantage of, particularly that we have been struggling with how to monitor and track the progress of the measures. And just to start with, it have all started when Namibia, through the Ministry of Industrialization and Trade, requested the technical assistance from UNCTAD, and of which it came out positive, including the Reform Tracker package. And last year, June, the UNCTAD Reform Tracker was launched in Namibia among the 19 countries in 3 continents. And I may assure you that this figure has really increased. That is not for one other example or practical example of how the benefits of the Reform Tracker is really making magic to the implementation of the WTO TFA. Having said that, Namibia National Trade Facilitation Committee, they have been presented on 2 several occasions. That was September last year, as well as May this year, of to what is the Reform Tracker, the whole unpackaging of how and what are the benefits. And that was subsequently followed by the training that we were offered by UNCTAD on the 23rd of September, 2022, of which the 39 Namibian users they received the training, and among that 21 users were also certified and can optimally make use of the Reform Tracker. I wish to mention that thank you so much to UNTAD for the continuous support in always ensuring that you revive the momentum, particularly with this tool. And allow me to continue with my presentation. And I'll end my presentation with a short video, less than 3 minutes short video, of which I have convinced my peers on what are the importance of the implementation of WTO TFA, particularly in Namibia. But other than that, let us look at the benefits of the Reform Tracker in terms of the Namibia context or the Namibia case study. This year, Namibia made use of the Reform Tracker during the early warning mechanism to notify the extension of the new definitive deadlines that was on the category C commitments, of which the tool, how the former or the previous speaker have really elaborated much on how the tool works. We had to pick on the implementation checklist that comes with what are the deliverables, what are the optimum execution of that particular measure, and in relation with what could be the compliance and what could be the description of the new requirements when it comes to that measure. So one could really measure the gap that we could put in the another tab as tasks or part of the to-do list, and that could give us and put us in the position of us giving a proper informed decision whether we could make it to do the implementation of particular measures this year, or we could extend them to within a stipulated time frame. Other than that, Namibia also had the opportunity to establish the working groups, such as through the SADC, SACU, African Continental Free Trade Area platforms or forums. And we are currently making use of the Reform Tracker as a library, particularly that due to other different stakeholders, employees maybe getting the jobs at another organization, we really make use of this tool to focus on the systematic knowledge transfer, of which even new users will be able to know what has been transpiring, what is happening, and what is to do next. And I'm happy to announce one of the substantive outcome of which it started with a work group between the Namibia Revenue Agency and the Communication Regulatory Authority in Namibia, of which we have a work group that is the job of that, or the outline terms of reference, is really to come up with the MOU, of which it's finalized. And with that, because of the good, smooth communication between stakeholders, it appears that there was a consignment that was coming from Finland to Namibia under that particular delegation, and that particular consignment had communication equipment on itself, which required the type approval. And it's because the Namibia Revenue Agency, we are 18 months now, and we have, because of the transition, we have changed our domain. So Reform Tracker was there to put us together, and they have since they have been looking at me as a focal person on the Reform Tracker, so they have asked me the details, or they have perused through the Reform Tracker to get my details, of which it came out very positive to share communication, and the letters were communicated between the two parties, and that expedited and facilitation of the consignment with a temporary exemption. That was one of the outstanding examples of the Reform Tracker that we have done of late. And Reform Tracker really, irrespective of the challenges that we have, the NTFC, the National Trade Facilitation Committee, of which it have it's not meeting frequently as opposed to how it's supposed to. We have the reform tracker have used in this instance to revitalize and put the committee member together with the secretariat together, and of which it have then come into the cabinet submission that is underway, so that there's a proper accountability in terms of how the NTFC is supposed to work, and including of other duties of the NTFC, such as the implementation of the whole package of the agreement. Other than that, of late, Namibia, through the reform tracker, we have also convened a meeting of which we had to update the country profile just to ensure that the NTFC database is not lagging behind, because there has been a disruption from since the pandemic up to now, of which the NTFC was not really meeting regularly. And those are one of the tools that really had to put the NTFC revitalize and just ensure that then the NTFC is finally functioning effectively with the inclusive of all, both public and private sector. So with that, I would like to give you, I believe in a specific quote of which effective trade facilitation really requires efficient trade coordination across the entire supply chain. And I believe this could be then the mandate of the NTFC to ensure that coordination and the job of the reform tracker does wonders to ensure that there's that effective implementation and efficient implementation that comes with the package of reducing both time and cost in implementing such in implementing the agreement. Having said that, I just wanted to bring in the further update on the reform tracker, of which apart from the training that we had from the reform tracker, we also had other couple technical assistance, of which it includes the NTFC empowerment program. And other than that, of late, we have also committed and joined another course, which is effective communicator, just to make sure that we break and go to the core of being ambassadors and implementing or issuing of the change management to the NTFCs. So with that, I pick one of the scenarios to convince my peers as to how the implementation of the reform tracker equally as a tool by implementing the WTO TFA in Namibia, it's quite of importance. And let me rather just play the video and that will make my conclusion of my presentation.
We cannot hear it well, Johanna.
I don't think we can play it, but what we can do is that we can, with the presentation, we can post it on our website afterwards, Johanna, if you agree with that, because it doesn't come through in enough bandwidth. So if you allow me, thank you very much for your presentation and also for highlighting many of the issues that has been appearing in Namibia. Thank you also for your collaboration, and this has been very important in the implementation of the reform tracker in Namibia. Thank you very much. I see to my great joy that we have Karen back. So I will hand back to Karen for the presentation. I think, Roxana, you will maybe launch the presentation from here. So
Yeah.
I give the floor to Karen, and Karen, if you could stay within the 15 minutes, that would be appreciated.
Muchas gracias. Las disculpas del caso. Bueno, tú ya me habías presentado, entonces voy a ir a entrar en materia ya directamente. Muchísimas gracias por la atención y por la oportunidad. Bueno, en la mañana de hoy les voy a hablar un poco de cuál ha sido la experiencia de Honduras en lo que es la implementación o el uso de lo que es el rastreador de reforma. Como ustedes bien saben, Honduras es uno de los países con reciente instalación del comité, el Comité Nacional de Facilitación de Comercio, denominado CONFACO. Fue instalado, ¿verdad?, en enero del 2019, bajo el PCM 039-2018, ¿verdad?, que habilita y le da vida a este foro del comité a nivel nacional, cumpliendo con lo que establece el Acuerdo de Facilitación de Comercio en el artículo 23.2. UNTAC ha venido a ayudarnos con esta asistencia técnica de gran manera, ya que hemos contado con lo que es el tema de la capacitación continua y el empoderamiento del Comité Nacional de Facilitación de Comercio. Hemos recibido cursos intensivos de facilitación de comercio, así como cursos de género y lo que es la facilitación de comercio, que sabemos que es uno de los temas bastante relevante en lo que es la actualidad, lo que es la participación de la mujer en el comercio. Aquí podemos ver algunas imágenes, ¿verdad?, donde están algunos del equipo técnico de facilitación de comercio. Déjenme decirle que el Comité Nacional de Honduras ha sido uno de los comités más activos de la región. Podemos ver aquí que por género tenemos casi la mayoría somos mujeres, ¿verdad?, los que participamos en lo que es el Comité Nacional. El sector público y el sector privado trabajan activamente y de una manera coordinada. Es importante señalar que el sector privado tiene una acción participativa y bastante activa en lo que es el comité con voz y voto. Siguiente, por favor. Aquí podemos ver lo que es la pantalla inicial de nuestro rastreador de reforma. Como les decía, en 2020 estábamos en plena pandemia cuando se nos presentó la oportunidad y la elevamos al más alto nivel, y nuestras autoridades estuvieron de acuerdo en lo que es la implementación de esta plataforma para el monitoreo, ¿verdad?, de la implementación de la FC. Siguiente, por favor. Ok, aquí tenemos lo que es las sesiones de capacitación que tuvimos con lo que es el rastreador de reforma. Vale la pena mencionar que la UNTAC, para lo que es la implementación de esta plataforma, se contrataron consultores nacionales para que estuvieran dando el acompañamiento, ¿verdad?, a lo que es el análisis que lleva lo que es alimentar este tipo de plataforma. Tenemos los 32 participantes del sector público-privado, tenemos 11 agencias involucradas y los 2 consultores nacionales que les acabo de mencionar. Siguiente, por favor. Ok. Honduras y las mejores prácticas que hemos logrado con lo que es el rastreador de reforma. Yo creo que mis colegas, los colegas que me antecedieron han sido muy claros, y creo que vamos a coincidir en muchas de las bondades que hemos recibido a lo que es implementar este tipo de plataformas. Una de las mejores prácticas como país fue ese apoyo del más alto nivel desde el inicio de este trabajo, ¿verdad? Con todas las instituciones estuvimos trabajando de la mano y fuimos sido apoyados por las autoridades desde el inicio hasta la actualidad. El compromiso institucional es vital. El CONFACO se ha caracterizado desde sus inicios por ello, ¿verdad? Cada una de las instituciones sabe bien lo que tiene que hacer, sabe bien cuáles son los compromisos asumidos ante del Acuerdo de Facilitación de Comercio, y hay ese compromiso institucional para lograr este objetivo. Cooperación entre las agencias que participan en fronteras, se ha hecho una gran sinergia en lo que son las agencias. No es que somos 100% exitosos en ese tema, pero vamos avanzando. De hecho, hay algunas actividades ya en puerta que hemos conversado con lo que es la Administración Aduanera de Honduras, con el SENASA, con ARSA, con seguridad y otras agencias, ¿verdad?, que tienen mucho que ver con lo que son los cruces de frontera. El tema de la participación del sector público y privado es un tema de bastante interés, ¿verdad? Y que ha sido una de nuestras mejores prácticas, porque el sector privado es parte activa de nuestro comité. Ellos forman parte de los grupos de trabajo que tenemos establecidos en el rastreador de reforma. Siempre están presentes tanto en las reuniones del más alto nivel, que son las reuniones del pleno, como en todas las reuniones a nivel técnico, dependiendo del tema que vayamos a abordar en ese momento o la actividad que estemos realizando, ellos delegan, ¿verdad?, a las personas idóneas y competentes en cada uno de los temas. Siguiente, por favor. Otros enunciados que podemos mencionar respecto a las mejores prácticas es la comunicación y transparencia. Hemos sido un comité que nos hemos caracterizado por esos temas, ¿verdad? Una comunicación fluida, ¿verdad? De las comunicaciones nuestras siempre son de manera oficial, ¿verdad? Siempre compartimos cartas, ¿verdad? Como creo que todos lo hacen, y también de manera electrónica. Son nuestras maneras oficiales de comunicarnos en nuestro comité. También ha sonado mencionarlo porque yo soy parte de esta institución, pero la Secretaría de Desarrollo Económico ha sido el encargado de llevar esta bandera, ¿verdad?, del tema de la coordinación, seguimiento y monitoreo a nivel técnico. También nuestra Secretaría acoge lo que es la presidencia, por decirlo así, del comité como por la coordinación, asimismo lo que es la Secretaría Técnica del comité, sin dejar de lado lo que es la importancia que hay entre esa comunicación fluida y efectiva entre las agencias que participan en el comercio exterior. Y también una de las mejores prácticas que nos ayudaron mucho en lo que es avanzar rápidamente en lo que es la implementación del rastreador de reforma fue esa contratación que se realizó de los consultores nacionales que estuvieron apoyándonos, ¿verdad?, a recabar esa información, a ayudarnos a evacuar dudas. Nos reíamos en algunas reuniones que teníamos porque le decíamos a nuestra consultora qué paciencia nos tiene, porque no es un trabajo fácil recabar y analizar toda esa información y determinar en qué estado de implementación estamos de lo que es el acuerdo de facilitación de comercio. Siguiente, por favor. ¿Cómo el rastreador de reformas contribuye o ayuda con la implementación del acuerdo de facilitación de comercio? Bueno, el trabajo en equipo, como lo he mencionado ya, es fundamental. Es una buena práctica que hemos venido practicando desde el inicio, desde la instalación de nuestro comité. Me recuerdo que allá por el 2019, en enero, uno de los primeros mandatos que dieron las autoridades o titulares del comité es a trabajar el equipo técnico, a analizar y a implementar. La organización es otro tema que nos ha venido a ayudar, lo que es el rastreador de reformas. Quizá teníamos una idea general de lo que teníamos que hacer para cumplir lo que es el acuerdo de facilitación de comercio, pero el rastreador de reforma nos vino a decir, esto va primero, esto va después, a organizarnos cómo trabajar, a crear los equipos de trabajo, ¿verdad? Por tareas específicas, a crearnos tareas y tiempos de cumplimiento. Entonces, ese tipo de organización creo que nos ha ayudado a todos los países que hemos acogido a esta herramienta. El compromiso, no podemos dejar el compromiso de lado, ya que este es pilar fundamental para lo que es lograr los objetivos o cumplir con las actividades. Si no tenemos compromiso, difícilmente vamos a cumplirlo, pero este es otro valor, lo digo yo, con que tenemos como comité desde el inicio. La responsabilidad. cada una de las instituciones o de las agencias estamos conscientes de lo que tenemos que realizar y esa responsabilidad, ¿verdad?, que tenemos que asumir todos para poder cumplir con todas estas tareas. La siguiente, por favor. Vamos a hablar de lo que son los resultados del rastreador de reforma en Honduras. Siguiente. No quiero extenderme mucho, pero sí es importante mencionar, ¿verdad?, que tenemos 37 grupos o equipos de trabajo creados en lo que es el rastreador de reforma. Tenemos 12 agencias participantes entre el sector público y sector privado. Tenemos 33 usuarios registrados. Estamos en esa tarea de revisar, ¿verdad? Porque como sabemos que todo es cambiante, y estamos revisando y analizando cuáles son los usuarios activos, cuáles ya no son parte de las agencias, y también estamos integrando a nuevos usuarios. Entonces esa es una tarea que estamos realizando, vamos a realizar en el transcurso de estos días para actualizar lo que es el tema de los usuarios. Y tenemos también 37 medidas del Acuerdo de Facilitación de Comercio actualizadas. Siguiente, por favor. Ok, vamos a lo que son los resultados por las medidas del Acuerdo de Facilitación de Comercio. Después de realizar ese análisis, que todo lo que hemos trabajado en cada uno de estos, de los análisis de cada una de las actividades, sabemos que no es una tarea fácil analizar cada una de las medidas que nos hace falta y definir actividades si no hemos cumplido esas medidas. Tenemos un dato que es muy satisfactorio a nivel de país, tomando en consideración que en la plataforma de la OMC tenemos reflejado que tenemos una implementación del 64.4%, pero al hacer nuestro análisis nacional, nos damos cuenta que tenemos una implementación del 82.72%. Obviamente que esta información la han brindado cada una de las instituciones que son parte del comité y que seguimos trabajando en este análisis. Vale la pena también mencionarles que uno de los mandatos que tenemos es no solo quedarnos con el análisis, ¿verdad?, que hemos realizado, sino que pasar de una facilitación de comercio de escritorio a una facilitación de comercio más operativa. Que este porcentaje que estamos viendo reflejado en una pantalla se vea reflejada en lo que son los cruces de fronteras, agilizar los pasos de levantamiento y despacho de mercancías, reducir esos tiempos que hay en puesto fronterizo. Entonces, aquí vamos al tema de la operalización. También, según el análisis que hemos realizado, son 30 medidas que se cumplen, ¿verdad?, según este análisis, y tenemos 36 tareas identificadas. Como les decía, este no es un panorama que teníamos antes. Ahora tenemos un panorama claro y tenemos un punto de partida para seguir avanzando en lo que es la facilitación de comercio. Siguiente, por favor. Ok, aquí hay un pantallazo de lo que les acababa de mencionar anteriormente, de lo que es el nivel de implementación después del análisis realizado, ¿verdad?, en el rastreador de reforma. Aquí podemos ver que nos dice que tenemos un 82.72 y también miramos el porcentaje de implementación a lo largo del tiempo. Como les digo, así hemos sido un comité bastante activo. Este ha sido un trabajo bastante arduo y extenuante, y creo que lo hemos hecho en un tiempo récord, pero ha sido por el mismo compromiso para que tienen las partes que forman el Comité Nacional. Siguiente. Creo que esta la voy a pasar de una manera más rápido porque lo que quería yo que ustedes vieran era el nivel de implementación, pero de lo que es la categoría A, B y C que tenemos como país, en qué hemos avanzado, qué nos hace falta para que ustedes se den una idea de todo lo que hemos logrado con este análisis que hemos realizado dentro de esta plataforma. Siguiente. Un tema que es muy importante resaltar es que una de las medidas que también queremos avanzar significativamente, que es lo que es la implementación de una ventanilla única. Ya con lo que el análisis que hemos realizado en el rastreador de reforma, ya tenemos una hoja de ruta que nos puede guiar más o menos por dónde tenemos que ir para lo que es la implementación de esta medida. Las autoridades, ¿verdad?, tienen esa visión de lo que es la digitalización y simplificación de lo que son los procesos, y una de las herramientas vitales para este fin es la ventanilla única, porque sabemos que es un punto único donde se van a realizar todas las operaciones de comercio. También podemos hablar de lo que es el tema de las notificaciones que hemos logrado en nivel de cumplimiento de lo que es el acuerdo de facilitación de comercio, y gracias al rastreador de reforma nos dimos cuenta que ya cumplíamos con estas medidas, que algunas las teníamos en C y otras las teníamos en B. Una de las medidas que notificamos hace poco fue el tema de lo que es la retención, ¿verdad? Que era una medida que ya teníamos implementada, pero no estaba notificada. Y también lo que es el tema de la ventanilla única, como les dije, es un tema que vamos a iniciar con los trabajos, dándole seguimiento a lo que son las actividades que tenemos trazadas en el rastreador de reforma. No sé si podemos avanzar en aras de cumplimiento del tiempo, ¿verdad? Y también la validación. Tuvimos una reunión de validación, lo que es en el mes de julio, si no me equivoco, ¿verdad? Donde se validó lo que es el tema del rastreador de reforma a nivel técnico y a nivel superior en una reunión del pleno. Aquí podemos ver algunas imágenes de la reunión que se sostuvo, donde se presentó ante el pleno cuáles son los resultados que hemos tenido con lo que es la implementación del rastreador de reforma, que es una herramienta, ¿verdad?, que nos viene a ayudar a dar seguimiento y monitoreo a lo que es la implementación de la AFC, y que ha mejorado lo que son temas de capacitación, monitoreo y coordinación interinstitucional. Siguiente, por favor. Aquí vamos a hablar un poquito de las notificaciones que realizamos recientemente, que fueron las notificaciones de la oportunidad de formular observaciones, la notificación de controles e inspección, separación y levante de mercancías, derecho de impuestos y aduanas, el tema de envíos urgentes, lo de mercancía perecedera y la cooperación entre organismos que intervienen en frontera. Esta notificación fue resultado del análisis realizado en lo que es la alimentación y la creación de actividades de lo que es el rastreador de reforma. Entonces, esto ha sido como uno de los resultados más tangibles que hemos tenido, y si ustedes se fijan que hay un denominador común, que tenemos 4 medidas que teníamos en C y que ya fueron notificadas. Y teníamos 2 en B y igual ya fueron notificadas. Entonces, esto para nosotros es un gran logro en lo que es este análisis. Como les decía anteriormente, el porcentaje del 87 y pico de implementación, no solo queremos que se quede en números, sino que sea una realidad en el paso de fronteras. Siguiente, por favor. Ahora vamos a hablar un poco de lo que es la cooperación público y privado. Yo creo que ya le he mencionado en los minutos anteriores que ha sido, nosotros como comité somos un referente a nivel regional por este tema, ¿verdad? Porque tenemos un sector privado activo y que tiene voz y voto en todas las decisiones que se toman en el comité. Somos claros, ¿verdad?, como coordinadores del comité, que el sector privado es necesario en este tipo de foros, porque todas las acciones que realizamos en el sector privado es para nuestro usuario, que es el sector privado. Entonces, aquí podemos ver que desde el inicio, desde la creación del comité, el sector privado y sus agremiados son parte de nuestro Comité Nacional de Facilitación de Comercio. Tenemos una acción activa y participativa del sector industrial, exportador, logístico, transporte y productivo. La participación del sector privado en el rastreador de reformas por medio del COEP y del ANDI ha sido de una manera muy transparente y también de una manera muy participativa, donde ellos aportan ideas en cada una de estas actividades. Y la participación del sector privado en las mesas de trabajo, ¿verdad? Para formular, ¿verdad? Actividades, acuerdos. Ellos son muy activos y creo que su participación es necesaria en este tipo de foros. Siguiente. Ok. Hay un tema que es muy importante. Nosotros a nivel centroamericano, para los países que no están muy enterados, Centroamérica está trabajando en un proceso de integración o de unión aduanera, ¿verdad? Que son todos los países que conforman Centroamérica, y tenemos un grupo técnico de facilitación de comercio donde nos reunimos muy seguido, ¿verdad? A tocar temas de lo que es la implementación de una estrategia centroamericana de facilitación de comercio. Y en una de esas reuniones se presentaron cuáles han sido las mejores prácticas de cada uno de los países, y Honduras presentó como una de sus mejores prácticas lo que es la implementación del rastreador de reforma en lo que fue el primer encuentro regional de comités de facilitación de comercio de Centroamérica, donde participaron los 6 países intercambiando experiencias. Y así identificar cuáles han sido las mejores prácticas de cada uno de los países y poderlo implementar a nivel regional. Y una de las mejores prácticas que sobresalieron en este primer encuentro fue el rastreador de reformas. Siguiente, por favor. Entonces, pues, como les mencionaba, una de las principales prácticas que fueron el tema de formulación de capacidades de los funcionarios y operadores de comercio, la implementación a nivel regional de lo que es el rastreador de reforma, y también se hablaron otros temas como lo que es la suscripción al convenio de Kioto. Pero vamos a centrarnos en las primeras 2 principales buenas prácticas identificadas. Sabemos que la formación de capacidades de los funcionarios operadores también lo ofrece lo que es la UNTAC. Y el tema del rastreador de reforma es una herramienta de lo que es la UNTAC. Entonces, en reuniones posteriores a lo que es el encuentro de los comités, los países vieron a bien implementar o buscar la manera de cómo implementar el rastreador de reforma a nivel regional, dándole un giro para el seguimiento y monitoreo de nuestra estrategia centroamericana de facilitación de comercio, que fue realizada bajo la sombría de lo que es el acuerdo de facilitación de comercio. No son actividades aisladas, ¿verdad? Entonces, lo que yo quería compartir con ustedes es que el rastreador de reforma es una herramienta que llama mucho la atención, no solo por ser una plataforma digital donde podemos alimentar y ver el monitoreo y ver porcentaje y ver gráficas, sino que es una herramienta que nos puede ayudar no solo a un país, sino que también como un bloque económico, como lo estamos visualizando en Centroamérica. No tengo nada más que agregar, más que agradecer la atención que me han brindado. Cualquier duda o consulta quedo a sus órdenes, y muchas gracias por el espacio.
Erin, thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you also to you, but also previously to Johanna, for mentioning also some of the other activity, capacity building and technical assistance that UNCTAD is providing and has provided to, for instance, Honduras and Namibia. We see this as a package where one of the activities follows the other. And it's a pleasure for us, and I think it's important for our partner countries that we see this as a true partnership. So thank you very much for this, and for some of the lessons learned that you highlighted here. And again, you were drawing out the regional aspect of the collaboration and where the use of the reform tracker can be also highlighted. Really appreciate that. We are coming soon towards the end of our meeting today, but we have one more presentation, and then we have the ceremony of appreciation or recognition that we would like to go through. So without any further ado, I would like to move to the last presentation. And this last presentation is by Ecuador. Ecuador is one of the other countries that have been excellent partners with us and has used the reform tracker, has had good political support for the use. And we have with us Gabriela Cadenas, who in her function in the areas of regional integration and multilateral organizations in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, is dealing with the technical secretariat for the National Trade Facilitation Committee. So Gabriela, the floor is yours for presentation. And again, if you could try to keep it within the 15 minutes or even shorter, if you can do that, that's a challenge for you. Thank you very much.
Tranquilo, buen día con todos, buen día, es un gusto tener la oportunidad de presentar la experiencia del Ecuador con el Reform Tracker. Mi nombre es Gabriela Cárdenas, formo parte de la Secretaría del Comité Nacional de Facilitación del Comercio, que la atiende el Ministerio de Producción, Comercio Exterior, Inversiones y Pesca. Muchas gracias, Roxana, por ayudarme con la presentación. Podemos seguir. En esta oportunidad quisiera presentarles muy brevemente, mi presentación se realizará en 3 secciones. Una, darles a conocer justamente cómo está conformado nuestro comité. En un segundo punto, nuestra experiencia con el Reform, y como último punto, los logros que hemos obtenido en seguimiento con esta plataforma, con el Reform Tracker. Siguiente, Roxana, por favor. Nosotros como comité, el tema de la facilitación del comercio lo tenemos en el marco de 3 instrumentos. El primero, el Acuerdo de Facilitación del Comercio de la OMC. Un segundo instrumento jurídico que propende a implementar la facilitación del comercio es el protocolo que suscribimos con Estados Unidos en el 2021, y nuestra norma nacional es el decreto ejecutivo número 68, mediante el cual el presidente actual declara lo que es política pública la facilitación del comercio. Este decreto fue firmado en julio del año pasado, y para noviembre ya del año pasado, justamente en el 2021, se fortalece lo que es el Comité de Facilitación del Comercio, agregando el tema de logística. Aquí, antes de saltarme, para que quede de manera clara, el Comité del Ecuador fue creado ya en el 2019, justamente con ya la entrada en vigencia del Acuerdo de Facilitación del Comercio, pero únicamente abarcaba lo que es el tema de facilitación del comercio. Ya para el 2021, en noviembre del año pasado, se incorpora lo que es como miembro pleno al Ministerio de Transporte y se incorpora al tema logístico, dejándolo así al Comité Nacional de Facilitación del Comercio y Logística, instalada mediante ley. Estos instrumentos justamente lo que buscan para nosotros es incrementar la competitividad de los sectores productivos, permitiéndonos diversificar nuestras exportaciones, mejorando el clima de negocios, reduciendo lo que es tiempos y costos para el operador. Siguiente, Roxana, por favor. Nuestro comité está conformado por 8 miembros del sector público. De manera rápida, el Ministerio de Comercio Exterior, el Ministerio de Agricultura, la Agencia de Regulación, Control y Vigilancia Sanitaria, la Agencia de Control Fitosanitaria, la Policía Nacional, obviamente el Servicio Nacional de Aduanas, el Ministerio de Gobierno y el Ministerio de Transporte. También contamos con la participación de 3 miembros del sector privado. Aquí cabe mencionar justamente que el sector privado participa de nuestro comité con voz, pero sin voto. Y su participación depende, y es la elección de ellos, de quienes pueden participar, dependiendo de la agenda que se lleve a cabo en las diferentes sesiones que que mantenemos nosotros de manera trimestral, de preferencias de manera trimestral. Siguiente, Roxana, por favor. Quisiera comentarles justamente que Ecuador en el año 2020 tuvo el levantamiento inicial de una hoja de ruta. Sin embargo, esto nosotros lo hicimos, por mencionarles, con un archivo, con un documento en Excel. No obstante, ya para el año 2021 tuvimos la oportunidad de formar parte de la cooperación de la asistencia técnica que brinda UNTAD para la incorporación de información en lo que es el Reform Tracker. Esto lo hicimos en conjunto con el sector privado. Se realizó de igual manera, la UNTAD contrató lo que es una consultoría del sector privado para realizar este levantamiento de información, que para nosotros fue muy importante que tengamos justamente esta visión de parte del sector privado para poder ver en qué estado como país estábamos en la implementación de la facilitación del comercio. Así también cabe mencionar que de manera paralela hemos tenido por parte de la UNTAD diferentes capacitaciones para empoderar lo que es el comité. Entre esos, pues hemos tenido justamente cursos en la plataforma e-learning para tener este acercamiento y conocer más sobre la implementación de las diferentes disposiciones del acuerdo de facilitación. Siguiente, por favor. En nuestro Reform Tracker como Ecuador tenemos 85 usuarios registrados, entre ellos son miembros del comité, miembros de la secretaría y, como les había mencionado, tanto del sector público también como del sector privado. En un inicio, pues, como ustedes pueden ver el gráfico, ya el levantamiento de información empieza en enero, si no estoy mal, empieza así en diciembre del 2021, y pues empieza a incrementar ya nuestra participación como miembros en esta plataforma. Siguiente, por favor. De los 85 usuarios registrados, conformamos más o menos, mejor dicho, están conformados por 29 agencias. Del 100% de estas 29 agencias, el 75% es del sector público y el 24% es del sector privado. Todos formamos parte de diferentes disposiciones. Como ustedes pueden ver en la pantalla, de igual manera hemos tenido alrededor de unas 3 capacitaciones por parte del consultor sobre cómo poder usar esta plataforma para incluir información en ella. Siguiente, por favor. ¿Para qué nos ha servido a nosotros como Ecuador el usar el rastreador de reformas? Primero, ha sido muy importante el poder monitorear el número de tareas y actividades asignadas a cada una de las agencias. Esto también, la plataforma nos permite lo que es mapear el porcentaje de cumplimiento de cada uno de los compromisos que vamos asumiendo e identificar el número de funcionarios asignados para la implementación de cada disposición. A manera de ejemplo, para nosotros, para el Ecuador, el artículo que más agencias abarca es el artículo 10.4. Y la plataforma, el Reform Tracker, nos ayuda a nosotros a dar seguimiento a cada una de las agencias responsables, de los técnicos que tienen actividades justamente para buscar incorporarse a la ventanilla única. Del 100% de actividades registradas en el Reform Tracker, hemos cumplido ya el 28.57% y estamos en cumplimiento del 71.43%. Esto es importante mencionarles que no abarca lo que es el cumplimiento del Ecuador sobre el acuerdo de facilitación de comercio, sino nos basamos únicamente en las actividades que hemos registrado. Y que, si bien es cierto, muchas de las disposiciones ya las cumplimos, también registramos actividades debido a que hemos visto la necesidad de mejorar las disposiciones, de poder ir un poco más allá de lo que dispone el acuerdo de facilitación de comercio. Siguiente, por favor. Anteriormente, de igual manera, tuve la oportunidad de mencionarles, me acuerdo en una anterior exposición, que la sección que más ha sido utilizada, sobre todo por parte de la vicepresidencia del comité, que la tiene el Servicio Nacional de Aduanas, ha sido la sección de monitorización. Y se nos ha vuelto una herramienta interesante de poder utilizarla, porque si bien en tareas nosotros podemos registrar lo que son obviamente las actividades de cada uno, en monitorización nosotros podemos incrementar la información. Y esto nos sirve a las demás agencias para poder ver de manera transversal cuáles son las actividades que estamos llevando a cabo para poder cumplir cierta disposición. Por eso nosotros, sobre todo SENAE, es la agencia que más utiliza esta sección y que nosotros más la usamos para poder dar ese seguimiento respectivo. Siguiente, por favor. De acuerdo a la información ingresada en el Reform Tracker, nosotros como Ecuador tenemos un cumplimiento del 84% del acuerdo de facilitación del comercio. Aquí mencionarles justamente, como les había indicado, el Reform Tracker nos ha servido para detallar e incluir actividades que nos permitan reforzar a las actividades de la facilitación del comercio. Y con esto mencionarles también que nosotros en el 2021, cuando iniciamos con UNTAD en el levantamiento de la información, teníamos un 75% de cumplimiento del acuerdo de facilitación. Y más adelante podremos ver a manera de ejemplo justamente 2 disposiciones que nos han llevado a incrementar este porcentaje. Siguiente, por favor. Adicional, mencionarles que el Reform nos ha servido a nosotros también para poder dar el seguimiento pertinente a otras disposiciones, como es el protocolo que tenemos con Estados Unidos, que va a la par del acuerdo de facilitación de la OMC. Nos ha servido mucho para, hemos ingresado información, las disposiciones que tenemos en el protocolo con Estados Unidos, y podemos así de esta manera poder hacer un comparativo de lo que tenemos implementado en la OMC y de lo que tenemos cumplido ya con Estados Unidos. En realidad esto sí ha sido una herramienta, un plus, como lo ponemos arriba, un AFC plus, para poder dar seguimiento a las diferentes implementaciones, no únicamente de la OMC, sino de otros instrumentos que propenden incrementar la facilitación del comercio. Siguiente, por favor. A mí como secretaría, en realidad me ha ayudado mucho lo que es el rastreador de reformas, porque puedo dar de esta manera seguimiento a los miembros del Comité Nacional de Facilitación de Comercio, y nos sirve como un repositorio de información. Como ustedes conocen, existe esta sección que emite ya un informe realizado de implementación del acuerdo de facilitación de implementación de las diferentes disposiciones, y esto es una herramienta muy fuerte, dado que permite tener una transparencia incluso entre agencias. Para mí personalmente lo primordial es justamente que todas las agencias podamos tener de manera transparente la información y podamos ver cómo nos podemos complementar para poder aunar esfuerzos e incrementar la facilitación del comercio en beneficio del sector privado. Como les mencionaba al inicio, nosotros hemos podido identificar que el rastreador de reforma nos ha permitido dar seguimiento para el cumplimiento específicamente existen algunas disposiciones, pero voy a centrarme en 2. En el tema de resoluciones anticipadas y en el tema de derechos y cargas. Aquí nos van a ayudar justamente a proyectar un video que les detallaré. Bueno, ahí nosotros vemos ya el porcentaje de implementación del Ecuador, que ya les había mencionado, nuestra participación y las agencias, de igual manera que ustedes ya vieron que tenemos 29 agencias registradas en el Reform Tracker. Y aquí justamente vamos a enfocarnos en lo que es la implementación de resoluciones anticipadas. Esta disposición estaba a cargo de SENAE. y tenía a cargo la emisión del reglamento para cómo poder emitir resoluciones anticipadas. Esto nosotros lo ingresamos en noviembre del 2021, si no estoy mal, creamos el grupo de trabajo donde ustedes pueden ver, Iván Ortiz forma parte del sector privado, es un grupo de trabajo tanto del sector público como del sector privado. Y ahí podemos ver justamente la pestaña de monitorización, donde podemos detallar aún más las actividades que SENAE realizó para poder dar cumplimiento a la emisión del reglamento de resoluciones anticipadas. Ahí justamente podemos ver el registro de Yulisa Godoy, que es quien representa la vicepresidencia del comité. Y bueno, esperemos que transcurra un poco el video. Yo no lo veo, pero no sé si es que está caminando o se detuvo.
Sí, está caminando. Está mostrando la implementación, la
De acuerdo.
verificación de implementación.
Gracias, Roxanne. Ahora está, sí. Ahí nosotros ya podemos ver justamente ya la verificación, el checklist de implementación del 100% del artículo 3 de resoluciones anticipadas.
Sí, perdón. Y aquí está para que puedas mostrar la... a ver, perdón, que aquí lo moví. Ya. Puedes seguir con la otra medida.
Y también justamente mencionarles con respecto a la otra medida de disciplinas en materia de derechos y cargas. Bueno, tenemos aún actividades por cumplir. Sin embargo, el reform justamente nos ha permitido registrar estos avances que hemos tenido. Quedan pendientes algunos encuentros interinstitucionales que están próximos a ser convocados para revisar justamente el tema de publicación de derechos y cargas para poder notificar a la OMC. Esto, sin embargo, cabe mencionar justamente como les indicaba anteriormente, el artículo 6.1 Ecuador lo cumple al 100%, pero como ustedes conocen, periódicamente debe mantenerse una revisión constante para poder mantener ese estatus de cumplimiento. Ahí podemos ver justamente la lista de verificación, estamos en 100%. De hecho, en la OMC les van a poder ustedes ver que cumplimos, pero sí vale siempre hacer un esfuerzo. Y aquí tenemos el tema del AFC Plus, del protocolo con Estados Unidos, y también hicimos una sección para identificar el tema de cooperación con donantes de los diferentes artículos que requerimos pues de esa asistencia técnica para poder implementar. Ahí podemos ver, justamente queremos trabajar en la formulación de un sitio web único y en fortalecer nuestro tema.
We can hear.
Thank you, Gabriela. That was a fantastic presentation in terms also of showcasing how much you can use the reform tracker and actually have a transparent environment between the public side and the private stakeholders, sharing information and moving forward. And one of the important things that you mentioned is that all of this work is ongoing. Even when you have fulfilled your obligation, for instance, towards the WTO TFA, there is always something more you can do. You have to follow up to make sure that you are still compliant over time. And so you have to review things over the years. And the reform tracker exactly can be used also for this. So thank you for showing that to us, and also for showing the concrete impact it has And I think the fact that your private sector has been so engaged is also evident to the usefulness of the reform tracker. The private sector also sees that this is something very useful where they also can track and be involved in the reforms that are going on. So thank you very much, Gabriela, for that presentation. We are already at 5:15 p.m. here in Geneva, so we have already gone 15 minutes further than we had planned. Here you are seeing the poll that we launched at the beginning of the meeting of the question, are you already a user of the reform tracker? 36% of the participants said yes, they are users, and 64% of the participants said no, they are not users. So there is still scope for expanding the reform tracker, and that is definitely something that, as I said before, we would like to talk to those of you that are interested. You are welcome to contact us, and then we will see together how we can progress with a possible implementation of the reform tracker. And in this respect, I also was very pleased to have one of our donors speaking, and I know that there are other potential donors also logged into the meeting here. If there are donors that find that their appetite for funding projects with the reform tracker has been further enhanced, you are also welcome to contact us. We have a number of requests for implementation of reform tracker or other of our capacity building efforts that we cannot honor right now, and we would be very interested in speaking to more donors on how we can collaborate for helping some of our partner countries. Now, without any further ado, I would like to go to the last point of the agenda, which is really where we would like to recognize some of the persons that have made a particular effort. There are many persons, and all of the presenters today have been involved in the development work of what we have been doing, and we would like to thank all of you. But we have a few persons that have made particular efforts in the sense of promoting the reform tracker, in the sense of the implementation of the reform tracker, and in the sense of also assisting us to further developing the reform tracker. And we would like to recognize those. So if I may start by Karen Sosa. Karen from Honduras. Karen, if you are still online and if you could turn on your screen. So we would like to recognize you also with this, and my colleague Pamela will be the one that is handing over the certificate. Pamela, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Paul. And I am delighted to deliver today this acknowledgement to Ms. Karen Sosa. She's coordinator of the technical group of Honduras National Trade Facilitation Committee. Her leadership, commitment, and constant coordination have made possible to notify the full implementation of TFA measures and gather over 258 stakeholders from the public and private sector in 40 meetings in the framework of the reform tracker, and all these over 2 years. So congratulations, Karen, and thank you for your support.
Yeah, congratulations from all of us. The next person.
Gracias a ustedes por este honor. Para mí es un privilegio, ¿verdad? Y estamos para servirle. Muchísimas gracias. Me sorprendieron.
Thank you very much, Karen, and we look forward to the continued collaboration. The next person we would like to recognize is Ms. Johanna Amukushu from Namibia. She has also made a tremendous effort and worked with us, and my colleague Arantxa Sanchez will be handing over the certificate.
Thank you, Paul. Gracias a ustedes por este honor. Para mí es un privilegio, ¿verdad? Y estamos para servirle. Muchísimas gracias. Me sorprendieron.
Thank you very much, Karen, and we look forward to the continued collaboration. The next person we would like to recognize is Ms. Johanna Amukushu from Namibia. She has also made a tremendous effort and worked with us, and my colleague Arantxa Sanchez will be handing over the certificate.
Thank you very much, Paul. So we are recognizing Johanna today because she really has went against resistance, domestic resistance about issues related to the Trade Facilitation Committee, and she has been an incredible advocate of the reform tracker domestically inside Namibia, but also outside Namibia. And we would like to recognize this and thank her for this with this certificate of appreciation. Thank you very much.
Johanna, are you still there?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Arantxa, and to the whole team of the Reform Tracker community. It's a privilege. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all your efforts, Johanna. And lastly, we have a certificate to be shared between two persons from our partners in Ecuador, Gabriela Cardenas and Ivan Ortiz, who have also been instrumental in the implementation of the Reform Tracker, but also in the further development of the Reform Tracker. And my colleague, Roxana Cortina, is going to hand over the certificate.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I'm really pleased to announce this recognition to this wonderful duo integrated by one person from the public sector, the Secretary of the NTFC, Gabriela, and one from the private sector, Ivan, who works in the American Chamber of Commerce of Ecuador, and also is a former Reform Tracker national consultant. They have both worked together hand in hand for the progress of the implementation of trade facilitation reforms in the country, in Ecuador, and they have very actively promoted and trained officers, stakeholders on the use of all the functions and sections of the Reform Tracker. They have been real leaders in guiding and coordinating the work of the national reform teams. And moreover, they have contributed making important suggestions of improvements of the Reform Tracker. These improvements now are incorporated in the tool for the benefit of all its users. So congratulations to Gabriela Cardenas and Ivan Ortiz from Ecuador.
So the dynamic duo from Ecuador, congratulations. It's nice to see that it is a collaboration between the public and the private sector. This is what we would like to see much more. Gabriela and Ivan, if you're there, you are welcome to say a few words.
Thank you very much from my side. Thank you very much. And we are going to have to keep working on the Reform Tracker and, of course, trade facilitation. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ivan. Very good.
Gracias de mi parte también. Muchas gracias, Pamela, Roxana y a todo el equipo de la UNCTAD, porque en realidad han sido una gran base para nosotros, para el levantamiento de información, para todo el comité. Yo creo que de todas las agencias públicas les deben identificar a ustedes porque nos han estado acompañando en todo este proceso y de nosotros de parte de Ecuador, pues únicamente agradecerles y continuar a las órdenes para seguir trabajando en conjunto con ustedes. Iván, muchas gracias igual de todas maneras por todo tu apoyo y seguiremos adelante. Gracias a todos.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ivan and Gabriela. And with this, we are coming to the end of this anniversary. Anniversaries also end at a certain time. And I think it has been a nice celebration of the 2 years. Time flies when you have fun. And we have definitely have fun with implementing the Reform Tracker. It is only the beginning, and we have a long path to still move ahead. I also know that there are probably many questions from many of the participants still. Again, you are welcome to contact us if you have further questions, if you would like to see a demonstration, if you would like to fund projects, or for any general questions that you have on how we from UNCTAD can support trade facilitation implementation in your country. As you have seen, we have solutions. We, to a large extent, work with the national trade facilitation committees. So thank you very much to all of the presenters. We really appreciate your collaboration and your partnership. We are there to assist. Thank you very much to all the participants that you have stayed on for the 3 hours plus that we are at. And lastly, I should like to thank very much the UNCTAD trade facilitation team. And I would like that you turn on your cameras, all of you, so our colleagues can see the team that is behind this, because this is truly a team effort that we are doing. We have a team of flexible between 12 and 16 person working with various countries. We have assisted more than 50 countries with trade facilitation implementation in general. We are right now around 21 countries working on the reform tracker, and each and every one of the team are contributing to this. It is also a nice opportunity to have the team together, present the team, and that you can see the team that you are working with. So thank you very much to the UNCTAD trade facilitation team. And for the organization of this specific event, thank you very much to Arantxa for taking the lead on this. Arantxa is a bit the godmother of the reform tracker in our group. Thank you for this as well. And I think with this, we are coming to the end. It has been a pleasure to have you participate. We hope to see you again. As you know, we are trying every 2 months or every quarter to have a quarterly meeting of the reform tracker participants. We will continue with that, and we will be in contact with you also on other trade facilitation work that we are doing. For those of you that are interested, you can visit our website. You can sign up for our quarterly trade and transport facilitation newsletter. And if you regularly visit our website, you will also see new initiatives, new activities that are going on. So thank you very much, and thank you for hanging on with us for so long today. It has been a pleasure. We look forward to see you either in the virtual environment or hopefully in your countries or in any meetings that we are participating together. Thank you, and have a good rest of the day wherever you are. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao. Thank you for participating.
Que tenga un buen día.